the the timeline we're in, the little season.
Okay.
So, Miranda, we might need a meeting between you, Jeremy, and her so that we could sort it out and have her see what Messiah said.
Yeah,
'Cause
there's a couple of scriptures. I watched a video yesterday, going to Jeff yesterday, and this guy had mentioned a couple of scriptures that I'd never heard before, from Luke, and I can't wait to share it with you and Jeremy. It kind of gives more of a clarification of the first resurrection. And I really liked it.
Let's hear it. I'm down. Let's go over it. I was actually I was wanting to kind of discuss that a little bit today because I know a lot of people have questions. And I know you have a lot of those verses from the extra biblical books and such as well.
Yeah, and still trying to gather more, of course.
Yeah. No, I'm interested in what you found for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't find it. Somebody else had mentioned it, and so I went and looked at it this morning and was talking to my mom about it all morning, and then we're trying to like separate Armageddon and Gog and Magog because people, I feel like, want to lump those in together just like they do with millennial reign and eternity, because they do sound so similar in some areas, but it's so important to take those apart. And then, because the people that are confused between those are also confused between the first and second resurrection. And you can't be mixing those because though they happen, kind of like in consecutive order, just like the days of the week from creation, you can't have one come before the other because that's just not how it's done. But they do happen after another. So you have to keep them in the order or else it's all going to be out of whack. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's where all that, there's a lot of new age ideology behind it as well that people push. There's a lot that try to say, oh, we're after Judgment Day, or there is no Judgment Day, or oh, scriptures is all just allegorical, and
right, and that's right, and so you're working against that, and then the people that don't even want to admit that we're there at all. So yeah, I know it is very hard to kind of swim through, but it's important to really get all the muck out so that you could see through the water clearly, because again, it is there in scripture. It's something that's going to happen, and you can't go over it and pretend like it didn't, and you can't say it, hasn't happened yet, because, there's this one point that somebody made that was like, well, if all these judgments happened, then where's the proof of all these waters turning red and whatever? And there was another guy that was defending, the possibility of little season. And he was like, well, the Nile turned red too during the judgment of the plagues in Egypt. And yet we don't see that red anymore. So did that not happen either? No, there's a specific judgment, and it's not red anymore because that judgment's over, because it was for them back then, right? Because Pharaoh would not let the people go. So we have to.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah. So yeah, very interesting stuff.
And when you do look into the history of things, you see, there was that whole year, the sun went dark.
Yes.
Actually, it was over a year, I believe. There was that day the stars fell from the sky.
Right.
And we see the moon turning blood red still today.
Right. But then, right, exactly. But then you see the difference of in eternity, the sun, moon, and stars aren't going to be used as they are used now. So, with all that imagery, they're still being used, right, for judgment, but they're not being taken away, because when they are taken away and heaven and earth is renewed, I don't know if they're gonna have different jobs or whatever, but their job is no longer to give us day and night, because there's gonna be light continually. You know what I mean? So there you again, you have the different and the separation of, what their purpose still is, and then what their purpose is not gonna be when eternity is here.
I know in Enoch he mentions, they're gonna be there forever, but they're gonna be for the glory and things like that rather than what they're used
Rather
for
than for the
now.
timepieces that we are allotted here within the time
Yeah,
domain. Yes.
yeah. So I know Enoch speaks about that. So they're still gonna be there, they're still gonna exist. They're just not gonna be like night and day things, but for other purposes.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of scripture, especially Revelation 20, that speaks, the most about it. But then there's, Enoch's 10-week prophecy. There's
Yeah.
what was it in Ezra or 2 Ezra that speaks about it as well.
Second Ezra and Baruch. Baruch has a lot of that as well.
Yeah, very interesting. And not to mention, all the verses that Messiah himself says, this generation will not pass before they see the coming of man. You know, some standing here today will not taste death before they see the Son of Man. He even told the high priest himself, like, you will see me coming in the clouds.
Yes. Yes.
It's all very scriptural, but the problem is all the people that have the New Age doctrine, or the laws done away with doctrine. That's what makes it so easy to be called like a doctrine of demons and things like that.
Yes, because mostly people also kind of get met with the churchianity concept of the state of the dead, and that's very important to understand too. And it's important to understand the chambers of Sheol as well. I mean, because why else would the key to the bottomless pit be given to release some of those that were born before, because that had to have happened. So yeah, it's I can't wait to go in depth with it more with you guys just a little bit. Those that don't understand much of what we're talking to, I'd rather talk to you and Katrina first about some of the verses, and then get a better, clearer understanding, right? Where two or more are gathered, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm definitely interested in hearing it for sure.
Yeah, that will be great.
I'm excited to hear Libby. I'm excited to hear what else that she had come up with too.
Me as well.
Hey, Jeremy, did you ever get Libby's study that she was going to present before the people over there? Did you ever get it from her?
No, no, that's
No?
why we called her this morning, actually. She hasn't had a chance to send it yet, but she said she will.
Okay.
And I did, so there was a couple of things I wanted to talk about. And one was, so there was like those 5 scholar quotes, and Marissa had found them. And using Chat GPT, but when I went to go double check those sources on those very same pages, unfortunately, none of them were accurate.
Yeah, that was like super exciting to find. Um, but then yeah, like it was definitely like look at what this said. We should go look into that more. And then when we did look into it more, they weren't right.
Yeah, yeah, because you had found them like literally the night before, and I I hadn't had a chance to thoroughly go through them. So just we presented them and went over them. And when I went to check it out, they don't line up, actually. And there's been a couple comments on the video about it as well. And that's also what I wanted to address, because Robert Villa ended up responding to one of these comments in the comments about it. So, he tried to say, oh, we fabricated the whole day after the Sabbath was added, things like that. None of that is true. So I wanted to go over that and show exactly in the scrolls where it's found, and, go over these questions again that, Robert Villa has refused to answer for almost a year now. That's the whole thing. He wants to come in on our comment section to try to make us look bad when he's not still refused to answer or even look and address our questions that prove his moon cycles are wrong. They start going wrong by the end of their first year. Isn't that what you were saying, Marissa?
Yeah, they start messing up by the end of the first year. And then, like, when I brought that up to Gina, and she's like, well, as long as it falls within the same week. So, but after 6 years, they're going to be off, because the moon cycles don't replicate like that every 6 years, like people want to act like they do.
Yeah, it's really sad. And then when Gina was told about it, she said, oh, I'm not going to be alive by then, so who cares?
I still don't understand how they even do that, because Robert is like gung-ho about citing the equinox, but why cite the equinox? I just don't understand their method at all. They want to line up 2019, right, with the priestly full, calendar, the full moon being on day 1. But then how does your year go on? Like, so when sorry, my son's in the pool loud. So what happens, like, when they get to the equinox the next year? Like, I don't understand it. Marissa, do you?
For next year, they're just going to start on March 18th now. Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah. Why? I mean, then
Because
you
they're
just
just
blow off
counting
the.
364 until they're so far away from the equinox, and then they add a week.
Oh, so they're gonna keep going backwards, and then, yeah, when they have to add that week. Oh, okay, I
Yeah,
think I
so,
see it now.
yeah. Because, I mean, already by, if you think about it, by next year, it's like starting in the winter, technically.
But they won't.
So,
They won't be able. They'll cite the equinox, right? Next year they'll cite it, but then they'll move it to the Wednesday.
That
That's what
almost kind of
keeps
sounds
them.
like what the Catholic Church does with Easter. They
Yeah.
it's almost like they celebrate it after the full moon or whatever it is that they use the
yeah.
moon for, and then they start it after. Is that kind of what Robert Villa is doing too?
They literally just count 364 for 6 years and then add the week. But then as soon as that's over, which now it already is, they intercalated and added a week for 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Right. So they added the week this year. Otherwise, per their count, they would have started on like March 11th, whatever that was, or maybe it was the 12th, whatever that Wednesday was before the equinox. So then they added it, and they had to start on the 19th already. So what about in 6 years from now, when they go to add the week, it's going to be like, what, the 19th or the 18th? And eventually, in 100 years, they're having year start dates as early as like March 11th or whatever it was that I found. And Gina's saying that's okay per the stars, but the stars do all the stars do the same thing that the sun does. And so I don't know what she's actually getting at with that. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can't understand all their theories.
So they miss the 0 day every year, and then they accumulate that 0 days at the end of so many years. So they're
Yeah, and then they
so
add
they're
a bunch of zeros in there.
and making their year 360 or 71,
Right.
but all those days turn into zeros. It's so funny. They're so
Yeah.
mad about our 0 day once
And
a
then
year,
they add
but
a week worth of zeros. No, that makes sense. I don't know.
I yep. And
And,
where's there any scripture that says do that?
yeah,
Nowhere. It's literally just like man's calculations. It's them leaning on their own understanding. There's no scriptures to support it.
That's sad.
yeah,
There's
it
nothing
truly
even
is.
alluding to it for them.
Yeah, there's not. There's no
Right.
scriptures alluding to it. You know, Jubilees talks about how it's 52 weeks of 7 days every
Hmm.
single year,
Hmm.
364-day count, year to year. There's never adding any intercalation of a week anywhere to that. And we know this because the Dead Sea Scrolls here tell us. And this is going to be, so let me just show you here. So this is for Robert Villa personally, who keeps dismissing this. So this is the Dead Sea Scrolls translated by Florentino Garcia Martinez. The link is always in the description on all of our videos on YouTube. So right down here, we're going to see 4Q394. As you can see, oops, there we go. So, excuse me, this is 4Q394, fragment 1. So we're going to see some missing text here, and then a Sabbath in it. After the Sabbath, you notice this little bracket right here. That little bracket. Let me zoom in case it's hard to see. But this bracket right here means an author's insertion. So all this phrase in between that bracket and this one over here, let me get to it. And this bracket right here is insertion. That is not what it says at all. It's going to say after that Sabbath is added. So let me show you the pictures I have of it. Actually, a screenshot together here, so it'll make more sense because it's on 2 different pages. But here we have the same thing, so it's a screenshot I took of both pages. As you can see, come on. So we see 4Q394, a Sabbath in it. After the Sabbath is added. So this bracket here, all this text in between is added text from the author, meaning it's inserted into it. You're not going to find this in Giza Vermes' edition or Michael Wise's edition because they don't include all the brackets everywhere. This is why Florentino Garcia Martinez is actually one of the best translations of the Dead Sea Scrolls, because he makes it clear where all of the author's insertions are. So there's no guessing.
So wait, Jeremy, are you telling me that translations actually matter?
Yeah, yeah. You know, like, so there's translations of the Bible where, you know, it talks about Peter's dream. And then there, in quotations, it'll say, this is saying all food's been made clean. Well, we know that that's an author's insertion, and that's not what the scriptures are saying at all about that. So it's like the same thing here. But really the sad thing is when you point it out to the people who actually understand the Dead Sea Scrolls, they want to say this is all fabricated, and oh, that doesn't really exist in there. Well, this is absolute proof it does exist in there. And Robert Villa especially, he knows about these brackets and what they mean. So him saying this is us fabricating something that's not there is a bold-faced lie. The problem is, Robert Villa, is we've been asking you questions for nearly a year that you have failed to address. And you want to come in the comments like you have some aha, I gotcha moment is laughable, honestly. Absolutely laughable. Book, line, and chapter of the priestly cycles bringing in the year, determining the year. I'd like to see that, Robert. Where in the Dead Sea Scrolls does it say to follow the moon? Where does anywhere in scriptures say to follow the moon? The author's insertions of the word dukkha do not actually exist in 4Q320. 4Q320 is actually about the stars, because we see that evidence in Jubilees 12:14, where Abraham is looking at the stars from the evening to morning at the head of the 7th month. We also see the word dukkha in the Strong's Concordance, H1751, showing it has nothing to do with the moon. So the word dukkha found in the Dead Sea Scrolls also has nothing to do with the moon. This is the question we keep asking you, Robert, and you failed to address for the last year. So the first one is, let's repeat them here. Let's see the book, line, and chapter of the priestly cycles and the moon anywhere in scriptures determining the year. Let's see the word Yarok anywhere in the calendrical scrolls of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And we see that your method that you're using actually starts to drift at the end of your year, right off the first year, and it's not going to match up every 6 years as you claim. Neither is this 294 years found in the Dead Sea Scrolls at all. Where is it in scriptures that the moon is our sign for any of these things that you're using them for? Right there, Jubilees in 2:9 tells us it's the sun that's the sign for all of these things that Robert Villa, Gina Sparks, you guys blatantly ignore. There's no getting around any of this. So,
Hey, and Jubilees was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? And Enoch?
yep.
Multiple times, multiple translations, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, more than most Torah.
Right, so they're valid.
Yep. So they can't say we're not using validation. So what proves them wrong is this right here. What Gina and Robert claim. There's going to be other years that match up to the same cycle who claim it's moon phases in the Mishmarot. So on 3/19/1924, the moon was at 98%. On 3/20/1935, the moon was at 100%. 3/21/1962, the moon again at 100%. This is absolutely disproving their 294-year claim. So this is found to be absolutely incorrect, what they claim, that it matches up to this same cycle every 294 years. Well, that's not 294 years. Plus, what we found, actually what Marissa had found, is the moon cycles have a pattern of, so these are the years, 5 years, 6 years, 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, 5, 6. It's not this continual 6-year cycle, as we can see. There's a few 5s in there as well. And it's not going to make it land in that same order every 6 years perpetually. So to say every year 1 and year 4 are the same, every year 2 and 5 are the same, or every year 3 and 6 are the same is not being truthful. It's because the solar cycle is 365.24, not 364. The moon doesn't fall behind 10 days every year, but rather 11.24. It doesn't give us any signs to intercalate or any of that. It doesn't do any of that.
Yeah, and whenever you add a week, it throws off the priestly cycles because, just say,
Yep.
well, they all served. That's just conjecture.
Yeah, 100% conjecture and speculation. Doesn't have the priestly cycle or 294 years in there. It doesn't say all the priests served on the same week anywhere. There's no verses anywhere in scriptures to add 7 days to the count. That's the interesting thing is
Jubilees
Gina
is
and Robert.
clear. It says 364 days only.
Yep.
Yep.
Truly.
From year to year.
And if they keep following their method, in 100 years, their calendar is going to begin in the winter. That's when Gina responded, "Who cares? I'll be dead by then." These people claim to be truth seekers, and they want to, come with their narcissistic comments on our videos. We've proven their method wrong. So here's the every 294 years. So 3/20/2019, that's the date Gina and Robert used. It was 100%. 294 years prior, 1726, down to 92. 294 years prior to that, 1433, it was down to 77%. So what they claim is not accurate. You can use whatever tracking app you like, but you're going to find the same information. And then we see Jubilee 6, 36 through 37. There will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon and how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony. So if the sons of Zadok had Jubilees as their foundation, and it warns us about making observations of the moon, why do some insist they were observing moon phases? These are all the answers these are all the questions Robert Villa has failed to answer or address. And every time we ask him these questions, there's no response ever. Just like in our comment section the other day, still no response. That's the wild thing. He has a huge problem with us having a divider day, a placeholder day every single year, but he'll add 7 0 days every 6 years in accordance with the moon. It's really sad, honestly. So here's the example, the best example I can think of. So the 0 day divider day is like 1.01. You can't have the 0.01 without that 0 being a placeholder. So the 0 has to be there. So the divider day is just the placeholder for the separation of years according to Yahuah. And we've gone through Jubilees. It speaks about counting the days starting from creation. And it's because it's holding that weekly creation cycle, which is holding the seventh-day Sabbath. And that's what Jubilees is speaking about. And then Enoch is speaking about the solar cycle, or the monthly cycle for the year, which is going to hold the festivals. And they both work together for the two witnesses and in synchronization, just, beautifully. We also have the witnesses of the stars as well. I don't see Robert and Gina using the stars at all. They'll claim to use them, but they don't tell you how. And we can show factual evidence of the stars being a witness and evidence of what we found here.
Jeremy,
Yeah.
if you think that they understood, do you think they understand that the moon being exactly 6 constellations from the sun is what makes it full? Do they even know any of that? Would that change their view on how they think of like their years and months and
That's a good question. I'm not sure if they actually understand that, because
yeah.
he
I mean,
does
because how
try
did
to.
we come? Sorry, I was just thinking about like, how we came to the conclusion of, a better understanding of this calendar, and it was putting the moon in her rightful job and putting the sun back where he belongs, right? And then all the pieces started making sense as to why the moon isn't for months, and you know, so I didn't know if he knew that.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I know he wants to talk about the full moon all the time, but he doesn't understand what the witness of it is. Its witness is going to be, when it's full, it's opposite the sun. So it's going to be in the opposite constellation of the sun, which is going to be a witness to which solar month we're in. And since there's a full moon that happens every month, that sign's going to happen between days 1 and 30 of the true solar month. That's going to be what the moon is the witness for. That, and for, crops, planting, harvesting, things like that. It's not a determining factor for the years, not a determining factor for the priestly cycles, because we see that 8-day ordination that has to occur has to happen at the head of the year, where there's actually that 8-day period between the last Sabbath of the year and the first Sabbath of the year, meaning the 7th-day Sabbath. Because actually the head of the first month is also like a 7th-day Sabbath, but it's a festival of Noah. So, we have a lot of evidence to show, Gina and Robert are absolutely incorrect. And, they can walk around with a pompous attitude and their nose in the air. But the fact of the matter is, they refuse to address any of the points we've made and shown and proven. And they fail to address that their method is absolutely incorrect. That's all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see if there was an actual discussion like had between us and Gina, or Robert and Gina, or Robert and us, but they really refuse to even have the slightest conversation. And it's pretty unfortunate when, we ask them questions or we show them how their stuff doesn't work, and they just literally just ignore it. And that's not fair. It's really not okay. We shouldn't be ignoring, our brethren, showing you that, the calendar just will not work and cannot work. You know, that's not fair. And then leading so many others astray in the process. It's really not, it's not nice. So
Yeah,
what
and
they're
that
doing is just blatant at this point to me. It's not even, they literally know they're wrong. And because of this mountain that they built, that they stand on, they can't see it crumble at this point. They can That's pride. When you cannot admit that you're wrong. Right there, all of that is pride.
yeah, and that's blood on their hands, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that Eddie Chumney went to one of their gatherings and, did a fantastic presentation, which I would love to share. But, I have to, when I do share it, I give a warning, like, this ministry, this is their calendar, and it's wrong. This is how it's wrong. Like, I have to give a disclaimer when I share the Eddie Chumney stuff, because I don't want people to be confused. We're over here showing people, how the sun marks the year, and they're pretty much going against that, saying that um, the priestly courses, run the year. That's how you figure out the year. But that's a little unfair, because it won't line up for 294 years. So what's even the point? Like, but Gina's right. We won't be alive when we can actually see the fruition of it all, right? Oh, but yet we still have, like, the internet that could actually calculate it all out for us, and it still doesn't line up. Like, that's a big problem, and that it needs to be spoken about. And it's just really sad that they won't. Instead, it's just gaslighting. It's trying to discredit me all the time personally, or trying to discredit, like, who's ever speaking to them. Like, I'll ask them a question, and then, Robert will just be like, well, how long have you been doing this calendar for? Well, I don't know, Robert. How long have
Yeah, and
you
like
been
that didn't
citing?
even address any of the points.
Yeah,
That's what I'm talking about. They just gaslight. That's exactly what I'm just saying, is that instead of addressing the issue, they'll just try to knock you down a couple pegs. That's gaslighting.
yeah, it
That's what
really
they
is.
are phenomenal at. Very
Yeah,
good at it. Just ignore everything that we said. So there is no discussion, right? They just cut you off, and then they cut you down because you're exposing them, because they
yeah,
can't back up what they even claim. I just hope
exactly.
people see this and the
Yeah,
dangers, because, this calendar is a very important, critical thing, unlike the mainstream popular narrative that, oh, Messiah is going to come back and fix the calendar, so why even try? Well, why even try? Because the Sabbath is the fourth commandment, okay? It's one of the top 10. If you don't have the calendar, you don't have the Sabbath. So yeah, it is important. Even if you want to
exactly.
be a feast denier. Okay, if you want to deny the feast, you're still having to do the Sabbath, because that's forever.
And then for the people that are acting like that
So,
the calendar doesn't matter, it's like, well, then why aren't you just doing Sunday Sabbath with the Christians?
right. Heck, why not even do Halloween at this point?
Huh?
Yeah, and that's the thing, people want to say, oh, you guys are too focused on the calendar, and that's all you talk about is the calendar. And
Well, it's
no,
important.
it's not what we talk about all the time. Yes, we focus a lot on it because it's very important. It was literally the major issue in Messiah's time, and we know because the Dead Sea Scrolls say it was.
So
And so,
it makes me wonder though, like, what are like their group, okay, following the author's insertions, what do they think that the writers of the Dead Sea Scrolls meant by the sons of darkness? Hmm.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And we can ask Robert and Gina the same question. How long have they been doing this method? Oh, about the same amount of time we've been doing ours, because that's actually less time because that's when we broke off, when we found this method. And then Gina was still looking into this at that time, hadn't quite gone public with it. So if you think about it, he's been doing it the same amount of time as we have with this method. So his "how long have you been doing this for" is no excuse. Not to mention we have our sister Libby, who's been doing it for 50 years. So, 50 years is quite a long time.
Well, not even to mention that literally the whole world is on the Gregorian calendar, basically. And again, you think of, you know, the Whore of Babylon causes, everybody small and great to receive the mark. And the mark is his law, right?
The
And
mark is
so,
also his Sabbath
well, right, but,
and
right, exactly.
Passover.
Right.
Right.
And so if you're on a calendar that established their own and doesn't take their authority from Yah, but you're saying it's preserved within all the paganism and so I don't think anybody looks at it at the vast majority of it like that, because if you did, all the evilness is within that system and the whole world is ruled by it. What? But yeah, he said his path is straight and narrow, and few that find it.
Yeah.
I don't think the Gregorian calendar is the few that are finding it.
Yeah, exactly. And,
Yeah,
Oh, hey, Shalom, Ken. Go ahead.
yeah, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I think it's really interesting that yes, the world is using the Gregorian calendar, but let's not forget that the Jewish religion have also got their own calendar laid over the Gregorian calendar. You've got the Chinese that run the lunar calendar, even though there is a Gregorian calendar, and they run that over the Gregorian calendar. You've got the Buddhist monks following their calendar. You've got another calendar in Thailand and Cambodia. So with all these sort of mainstream religions, they are running their own calendar. It just appears for some peculiar reason that the people that read the Bible haven't got a calendar to run with.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, now we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, by taking back what Enoch had gotten revelation from the angels on how the luminaries work, and then jubilees being reestablished with Moses.
And again, you're quoting books that are considered sort of hideous, heretical, if you were in mainstream Christianity.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Right, because those books were taken out by the ones that fundamentally made Christianity.
Yep, Rabbi Akiva. It's amazing how many people don't know about Rabbi Akiva and him removing all these books. And they just want to say, oh, well, they were left out, so we shouldn't read them. Well, no, they were taken out. They were removed by men. So men removed his word.
Right. And Jeremy, when I was discussing, Enoch and Jubilees with somebody, and she came out with all these claims trying to debunk Enoch and Jubilees, you could tell she didn't even read the book. She's just parroting off what someone else said.
Yeah.
I'll
go ahead.
Sorry, Jeremy. Go ahead if you wish. I was going to say I did a little study about Enoch just today, actually, and I was only in the first pages really, and it's And to break it down, what Enoch's saying in the first, even the first paragraph, is he's saying that what I'm about to talk about is for the remote generation, i.e. the last generation, i.e. the generation before the judgment comes. And straight after that's been mentioned, there's talks about the day of judgment itself. So in verses 1 and 2, it's for a remote generation. In the verse 3, it's judgment day. And then it talks about judgment day and how he's going to protect the elect, the ones that choose to keep his commandments, etc. So that's the first chapter. Now, chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all calendrical expressions, how the sun's moving, how the seasons work, how everything is in process, how the stars are moving, etc., etc. And I mean, if you can't understand that, actually, in the introduction of Enoch itself is saying, look, this calendar thing is going to be really, really important in the last days for that remote generation. He's reiterating, look at the stars, look how they move, look at the sun, look at how it moves, etc., etc. Look at the seasons, look at winter, look at summer, see all these things, see how they're regular, see how they keep their purpose, see how they don't change, etc., etc., etc. So just by reading the first sort of 5 chapters in Enoch, you're inspired to get excited about his calendar and to keep his days.
Yeah, and I think that's a point a lot of people forget about. All of Enoch is speaking about the calendar and the Messiah and the last days even. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it's the first book written, and it seems to be written for the people in the last days. It's absolutely incredible to think that he wrote this book, and he must have been excited himself writing this book, knowing that the people that would read it at the end and pick it up and run with it were going to be the last generation before the judgment comes.
Yeah, and these people try to deny it, and they were basically parroting what David Wilbur says to deny it, and it's all these fabricated points. Like one of them was, oh yeah, Enoch calls himself the Son of Man. No, he doesn't. Not once. He's told about the Son of Man coming and how important he will be. And who is that? That's Messiah himself. In the same chapter, he tried to say, oh, it's talking about calling Enoch the Son of Man. No, he's actually speaking about Messiah. Yeah, here, let me go up to what he said. It was, so he was denying Enoch, Jubilees, and, well, of course, I agree with Jasher. It's not very good, but, he was saying,
It was
okay,
actually a girl. It was actually, the post was from a girl.
oh, it was from, okay, sorry, apologies.
That's okay.
But
Not a big
she's,
deal.
like, her first claim was, there's forgiveness for angels. And trying to use Enoch interceding because, the fallen ones begged him to intercede because, they couldn't talk to him anymore. They'd sinned. So they lost their link with him. So they were like, hey, can you go and tell him, we're sorry and this and that. And Enoch, having compassion, was like, all right, I'll do it. But then Yahuah said, nope, they're not forgiven. They're unforgiven. And they're going to be where they are until the day of judgment. So first point, fabricated, because the angels were not forgiven. And then says, the second claim was, it says the giants would be destroyed after 120 years. Actually, it does not. That's another fabricated claim. It does not even say 120 years anywhere in there. And, of course, the solar-only calendar was the third qualm. Well, book, line, and chapter of Moses citing a moon for anything.
Well, that's the thing. Like, they're trying to disprove the solar calendar, and they have to, in the same breath, deny Enoch and Jubilees too, because they expose the lunar calendar. So when they say, oh yeah, Jubilees and Enoch, well, you have to take a look at what they preach and what they stand for and see exactly why they have to refuse it. They have to, because it goes against their stuff. So when they say, oh, see right here, we use the lunar calendar because, no, not Torah, not Messiah, not anybody, but David claims that the moon is for appointed times. See right there. Here's your calendar. Well, if you read that in context, I mean, when you really look at that verse, I read it to my sister-in-law in Psalms 104. I said, what does this sound like to you? She's like, well, the moon is for night and the sun is for day. I was like, yeah.
Boom.
But this is what they base this verse and Psalm 139 and Psalms 81 verse 3. Here's your witnesses. The calendar is lunar. Well, let's go take a closer look at Psalms 81. It doesn't say anything about a moon. As a matter of fact, it's really, really mistranslated.
And doesn't those verses in Psalms then go on to express what happens at night time?
Yeah.
And how sort of evil and people prey on each other and all evil is worked through throughout the darkness. It's got nothing to do with
animals.
Whatever, yeah.
The animals come out for their prey.
But that's, that is also a reference to how people behave at night time. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, precisely. But this
funny.
is what they build their calendar system on. It's these cherry-picked verses. And then I asked them, hey, how do you even... Okay, so how is the moon for appointed time? Show me how... Well, when it becomes full or when it becomes empty, every single month, that's the appointed times that this verse is claiming, apparently. But again, it's just, what is that? It's conjecture. It's adding something in. It's adding what you want to be there.
Yeah.
But is not there.
And it straight up comes from Babylon. If you go research the Babylonian calendar, you're going to see they went by the sliver moon. You're going to see the modern Jewish calendar named all their months after the Babylon calendar days. You're going to see Babylon sighting moons to begin each month. And you're also going to see Babylon observing a Sabbath day after every new moon, like 7 days after a new moon. And then if you look even deeper into it, it wasn't only, these Pharisees that adopted that calendar. It was the Seleucid Empire as well, Greece, and then Rome got their calendar from the Seleucid Empire, named their 7-day floating lunar week after the pagans' planetary gods, and with Saturday being the first day. And that wasn't even changed until 321 AD.
And let us not forget that the Satanists are under a lunar calendar. The Masonic lodges run under lunar phases, as do the Illuminati and the Jesuit priests. They're all the workers of evil are following the lunar calendar, and I just don't want to be part or close to anything lunar. And I can remember saying this to myself about 8 years when I was looking at the calendar. As soon as I saw the moon and what the effects it was, I said, no way is that got the character of Yah on it at all.
Yeah, exactly. The word lunar itself comes from, lunatic.
When I was going back and forth with someone this week, it was really crazy because he mistranslated that verse in Enoch saying that the sun brings in all the years, and it says, like in some translations, the moon. And I'm like, how does the moon? He agreed that the moon cycle is 354 days. And I said, yeah, but that's not divisible by 7. 7 doesn't go into that. And I showed him Jubilees, which he denies because he has to, right? Because of Jubilee 6. And he was saying, oh, well, Jubilee 6 isn't really talking about like the moon for months. It's talking about if you're using it incorrectly. And I said, well, yeah, if you use it, because it specifically says you'll be 10 days short a year. It's like, well, you know that the moon cycle is 354 days. That's 10 days off of the 364 day, which is expressed in Enoch and Jubilees time and time and time and time again. So they're right, like it's right there. You have to deny that Enoch and Jubilees says the year is 364. And if it's 364 in these verses, then how does the moon bring in all the years if it's 354 days cycle?
And that's why they add their 13th month every third year, because it's 10 days short every year. So 3 years is going to be 30 days. That's where they get their 13th month. And in that verse in Enoch, actually, if you point out the phrase right after that, where they take out sun and stars and they insert moon, it still has the plural they for the sun and stars, for the singular word moon. That's another clue right there. Because it says the moon brings in all the years, and they don't transgress their order. Well, what do you mean they? It's just a singular moon. But I mean, that's a big clue there as well. At least to me, should be for everyone else.
So there you go. Like, it's a proven mistranslation. You could prove it in so many different ways, but you just didn't want to hear it. It's just really sad. It really is so sad because they have so much of scripture, like, understood, but then they fail. They falter at this one, point. And it's like, but I just proved it to you right here. Nope. They just nope. It's real. It's so sad to me.
And then not to mention, there's many other verses that Enoch is speaking about where he's saying it's the sun and the stars that are bringing in the year, no moon. So that's just another clue to the mistranslation. I know it's in the Sefer, and they mistranslated it in the Ethiopian Bible as well. So we have to remember the Ethiopian Bible, while yes, it is old, it stems from the traditions of Judaism as well. So they edited words, did things to, have their own ideology fit. Kind of like what Dr. P does with the Sefer. Changes up verses, edited words, changes things up to get his own ideology to fit in with scriptures when it doesn't actually do that, Yeah, absolutely, Sumi. We found the lies and chose to continue seeking. And that's a problem. All these truth seekers claim to seek truth, but when you show them the lies, they reject it. Go ahead, Brother Ken. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to read Psalm from one of the Psalms, 146:8. The Lord openeth the eyes of the blind. The Lord raised them off that are bowed down. So here we've been on about this today with that guy, Victor Nunes, haven't we?
Oh
He opens the eyes of the blind, i.e., the people that aren't seeing things the way they should be seen. And he raises them that are bowed down, i.e., the ones that are humble enough to work themselves away from their own thinking, but to look at the way that that Yah's got these things written down. And the Lord loveth the the righteous. So just in that sort of single verse there, we got to say that it's Yah that opens eyes. We can't open the eyes, I'm afraid. We can't open the ears. Yah does that, but all we can do is trying to get that person down to being humbled and being in a state of humility in order that God can work those things in him.
Well, that's why we have the scriptures, right? I mean, that's why we show them what we show them. Yes, the Father opens up the eyes, but we can't neglect the fact that we are here to plant the seeds. So when they're met, and I haven't heard a thing from any of the people that I'm trying to, go back and forth with, because I dropped that seed of truth. We all did that today. But it's up to him to actually open their eyes. But the scriptures should, if you're humble enough to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally agree.
And Shabbat Shalom, Libby. Glad to see you make
Yeah,
it.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat
Lisa's
Shalom.
Thank you very
here.
much. We've
Jennifer's
got
here.
a few of us here listening in. It's wonderful. Shabbat Shalom to you all.
Yes.
Shabbat shalom, dear sister.
Shabbat
All my
shalom,
family.
everyone.
Yay.
Yeah, did
Yeah,
you
so
okay.
Libby, did you want to say anything about your newest revelations in regards to like the shadow of Messiah? That was a good one.
Yeah, came round to Jim's and Liz's house last night. Didn't
Uninvited.
You are awful. But I do like you. We didn't go away from here till about 12:30 last night. And yeah, we had a few revelations last night. It was quite interesting. It was to do with the fact that referring to the shadow, when you think about it, we've got Yahuah, and you've also got the Yahusha, and he is the shadow of Yahuah. Yeah. My father and I are one. And it's the substance of the shadow. I thought that was quite interesting. That came while I was in the cottage, while the others had gone to the meeting and I hadn't been invited. Oh, dear me. You've shocked me. You've really, really seriously shocked me today. I came back in the room after I'd had this conversation with Jeremy and Katrina, and you were saying about the fact that Eddie Chumney apparently is putting back into the equation the moon. Obviously, Jim and the others weren't privy to listening into that conversation. So if you could manage to just share that bit so that Jim and everybody here could have a listen into that, we'd be more than interested to hear it again.
Yeah, so when we first came into the calendar, we were really good friends with Gina Sparks and Robert Villa, and they were kind of getting a little weird, saying, oh, the equinox doesn't matter. Oh, the equinox doesn't matter. And so Marissa, I, and Jeremy were, all ears. We were just like, okay, let's hear what they have. And they put out a claim that the priestly courses was the determining factor with the moon involved and not the equinox. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll consider it. And that's when Marissa actually looked into what they were saying about these priestly courses and the moon determining like the full moon on the equinox. even though they were still denying the equinox. So it's kind of weird. But the full moon has a cycle of some sort. I don't know. Jeremy, could you explain it better?
Well, they claim that this moon has a 6-year cycle, and that every 1 and 3 and 2 and so forth. We kind of briefed over it earlier, but they make claims that, it has a 6-year cycle, and, it resets every 294 years, and, every 6 years, all the priests serve in this, intercalated week, and, they have to, intercalate to the closest Wednesday, these things. But, we looked into their moon phases they were claiming, and, Marissa was looking into the moon phase side and what the moon actually did. I started digging into the priestly cycles and what they actually said. And then we both came together and found out, look, their method's absolutely wrong. It doesn't even say in the Dead Sea Scrolls to use the moon for these things. In fact, the only word found, what they claim is moon phases, is the word duke or dukkha. And when you actually look at that word in the Strong's Concordance, it has nothing to do with the moon at all. It's actually used for the crumbling of the statue that in Nebuchadnezzar's dream that Daniel is speaking about. So we don't see moon phases in the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves. Those are authors' insertions. And so when you see these moon phases inserted there, you're going to see them in parentheses. And then they claim that, oh, this is going to be the such and such date of the lunar month. But when you actually dig into it, that's not there. It doesn't exist in the text. Nowhere does it say that they're using the moon to determine their priestly cycles. And in fact, when you go into 4Q320, it's missing some text at the beginning, and then it talks about how it's rising from evening to morning. People want to claim that that's the full moon because, Giza Vermes says it's the full moon. Well, that's incorrect, because in Jubilees chapter 12, verse 14, it talks about Abraham looking up at these leaders of the heads of the stars from the evening to the morning. The same exact language as you find in 4Q320. So we found that it's probably talking about these different stars or these star calculations rather than moon calculations.
So Eddie is following their calendar. He went to their Shavuot gathering, and he did like a 7 series long lecture of the Zadok history, which is fabulous. But you could tell that he's siding with this erroneous calendar that they have created based on the Dead Sea Scrolls authors' insertations rather than what the scrolls say themselves, which in all reality, it doesn't work. It doesn't line up the way that they say it does. The moon doesn't work that way. And that's the calendar which he's kind of siding with, because he mentions the priestly courses a lot, and he sounds like he's using it as the determining factor of the year when it's not, and the moon. So yeah, that's how he kind of fell backwards into the moon stuff through their particular calendar.
That
Now you can speak. Will you drag my hand out the way you can't speak unless it's on?
no.
Well,
What was the name of the group, Katrina?
Gospel worth dying for?
What was the name of the group that he joined up with just
Gospel worth
recently?
dying for.
No, it wasn't that what you said before.
Prophecy Vine is Robert Villa's channel.
And what's the other one?
Well, his channel is Prophecy Vine. What their group is called is Gospel Worth Dying For.
The Gospel Worth Dying For.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was another name of a big ministry. It wasn't like El Shaddai, it was something else.
Avi Ben Mordecai. I mean, I
That's
mentioned
it.
him.
Avi Ben Mordecai. Yeah.
Oh, so he's just another person that sides with this calendar that's linked
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
But he has a whole big passion series of the death, burial, and resurrection of Messiah, and he's wrong on that one too. He's
What
like,
does he say?
I forget. It's been so long since I've listened to that. Marissa, do you remember?
What? I just I wasn't here for like the last 10
Oh,
minutes.
Avi Ben Mordecai. Do you remember what he was saying with the death, burial, and resurrection? I'm looking it up now.
No.
Okay. It's escaping me. I kind of all control delete certain things that don't make sense to me. But I did walk through and study out his whole series, but it is wrong. So he's linking himself up with Gina in her calendar.
Right, there's her calendar too.
What is her name?
Gina Sparks.
Gina Sparks.
Well, the calendar we follow, Katrina, is not ours.
What was that?
The calendar we follow is not ours.
Oh, it's not ours. No. Yeah. Well, it's the one that we're on now.
Right?
It's Yahuah's, yes. But it's the calendar
Right.
that we are keeping now. Yeah.
Lines up entirely with Scripture.
Correct.
Did you know that we spoke to Eddie before we went to the conference?
Yes.
I spoke to
Libby,
him personally. Libby
you
did
spoke
too.
to him.
Yeah.
What did he say?
I spoke to him about where Job prays in Job chapter 3, and you read the first 4 to 5 chapters. He's crying that the day that he was born should be blotted out of existence, and the Most High answers his prayer because it's not reckoned in the calendar, but obviously it is there. And so in a way that prayer was answered because it's not reckoned. It says in all the scriptural references to this day shall not be reckoned. But to go further, it then names it as the divided day for the year, verse 6 of Job chapter 3.
What did he say?
I said, I'm not going to say anything else because you're a busy man and you've probably got far more important things to talk about than talk to somebody like me. So, I just other than to say hello and because I know that you've got lots of things coming on your phone and you're speaking to people all the time. So be barakah, brother. And I just said, you keep a look at that, and I'm sure it'll lead you to the truth. Now, we'd already spoken to him about 3 days earlier in the Lake District in the North Lakes Hotel, and we'd actually ordered hot bread for the meeting, and we paid the hotel to bake this bread, and we delivered the hot bread so that when we were explaining Samuel chapter 1 verse 20, 1 Samuel chapter 20 verse 20, chapter 20, explaining like how David had met Jonathan, and then after the equinox was over, 3 days later he'd gone to see Ahimelech the priest, and he was putting the hot bread out for the Shabbat, which clearly that scripture is only in the scriptures, in my opinion. That whole episode is only there for one reason, so that we can all nail down the equinox and the right day for Shabbat. clearly defines it without question. But anyway,
Absolutely. Was he
we explained that.
unresponsive?
No, we had a great. He smiled. He shook our hands. We had a good time. There was about 9 people or 10 or 12 people at that meeting. People came across from Ireland to meet him. Our main group and Libby and a few others, Mary, Yarbon, and the girl from Ireland. I forget her name now. Mary.
And a husband.
And her husband. We all met him and we all had a chat. So it was a good, interactive and responsive meeting, which I thought went well. Then later on at the meetings, Libby, who'd been expelled from it, I was against going altogether. I wasn't going to go. It's a bit like if I was with you and somebody said, "You're not coming into this nightclub, go away." I'd say, "Right, we won't go in neither. So let's just bin that and go somewhere else." That's my opinion. Like, it's just my stand as a man. But I said, like, my ways are not his ways, and so what we'll do is we'll pray about it, and Mary and Libby and Yarbon in our group, we all prayed about it, and the next day all said, well, I'm thinking, and Yarbon got it from the Most High actually, that we should go. I still was really nuts against it, but I thought, well, I'm not going to go with my mind, because my ways aren't his ways. And Libby was insistent that we should go, and so was Mary thinking we should go. So we went to the Huddersfield Convention with Eddie Cumley, and that's when I shared Job 3 with him. And then later on, because I had not booked correctly the accommodation, I thought I'd book 3 days, but I'd only booked 2. So we had an emergency during the second session. It was only 2 days, 2 sessions over 2 days, and there was 3 sessions on each day. And I was on the first session of the second day when somebody came to the door and I got a text saying we've got to vacate the property. And the guy was lovely because he said you could have stayed except the cleaning arrangements, because the day was still free. Wasn't rented out till the next day, but he had all the cleaners coming in to clean the place, and so we had to basically move. And the upshot was Jessica Knock then turned around and sent me a text thinking that we had to be out pronto, which we sort of did, but the guy gave us a bit more grace than that. He said, Libby, if Libby wants to come, Jim, she'd be very welcome, but she can't discuss the calendar. So I didn't answer that because I had the text. So I said to Libby, listen, you've been invited to come over. You've been invited to come over. So the next thing, Libby's there, and then I was really spending time with Liz and sorting the property out when Libby and the girls went back over to the conference. So the guy named Dave that was with me. So she shared a third part. She shared the priestly courses with Eddie, explaining that they couldn't come on duty until they'd spent 7 days sanctifying themselves, separating themselves, and preparing themselves to be holy before the Most High on the first Shabbat of the year. And the only way that can be done is to take the yearly divider day for the year, which I'd explained to Eddie. It explained about the true start of the equinox and how it was explained in the 1 Samuel 20 with David and Jonathan. And then Libby explained the priestly course. He had a double witness at the conference and a witness before. So what he's doing going forward is, as far as I'm saying, he clearly knows the truth. There's no grey area.
The thing that quite was interesting, I would say, Katrina, that time that I spoke that night to Eddie, and I had those 20 minutes on my own with him, which was amazing. I wasn't expecting at all. But one thing that I did manage to say to him was something that I got from Jeremy the other night, which I thought was fascinating. And Jeremy was making the point that why we don't have a problem with the fact that Yahuah has placed dividers between the seasons, from spring to summer, summer to autumn, autumn to winter. Yahuah himself has placed divider marks. And Jeremy had said, just before we went to that meeting last Sunday, Jeremy said, so why should we have a problem with the fact that he divides the year? And he's made a divider between the ending of one year and the beginning of a new year. And that resonated with me when Jeremy said that last Sunday night, and I thought it was fabulous. Wonderful. And so I used his quote to say to Eddie Chumney. And he actually looked at me, and I could see him sort of studying my face for a minute, as if to say, yeah, it's a good point, that. He didn't say a word, but I could see that had resonated. I hope it does.
Yeah, because Libby, what they're doing with their intercalation, they are doing day zero, but they're just accruing the day zeros at the end of 6 years. So they're doing the divider day. They're just putting it at the end of the year as a week. And so instead of just skipping the one day per year, because there's 365 days in a solar year, but there's 364 days in Yah's calendar, just do the math. It's only 1.2 days difference. And
yeah,
it's that I believe is the winning ticket, because I mean, I asked Victor today, how many days from vernal equinox to vernal equinox? And he wouldn't answer the question, because it's almost as if they know. So he wouldn't answer the question. He's like, you answer it. I said, there's 365 days. How many days is Yah's cycle? And he still wouldn't answer that question. All right, well, I'm going to answer that question. There's 364 days, Victor. So there's just 1 day difference. That 1 day divides the year. From day 364 to day 1, it just gets counted as a 0. It becomes void. It's Job's birthday. It's Jeremiah's birthday. And so it's just as simple as what we see, what we could count with our own eyes. And it's not like ever going 364 day forever. No, there is a pause, because that's why it's important to understand that the luminaries are to mark the years. If you want to keep going on with your weeks like throughout eternity, it won't work, because that you're just going to blend in. You're just not, you're going to miss that pause day. Just like, missing the four tekufas. Some people want to put those at the end of the year. Some people want to put those like Sean. She wants to take out those days, those seasonal divisions, and he wants to put them at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year, whichever way you want to see it. That's what he does. He's not utilizing these markers in time to separate seasons and to separate the years. So that's a really important point that people need to see, is they need to.
I'll tell you something that just struck me as you were talking, Katrina. You used the word pause, and throughout the scriptures, quite frequently, you get the word selah, which is pause.
Pause for thought.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And what's funny is the word dukkha as well, that's in the margin, is another one of those, pause for thought, because it means carefully examine. The dukkha.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? This is Ray Tall, and I spoke to Eddie Chumney he had a meeting in Danville, Illinois, years ago, about 15 years ago, and at that time, of course, I was studying with Sarah Davis since probably 2005, somewhere around in that area. And anyway, then we was with a kind of a messianic group, and they invited Eddie. And during the break, Eddie was sitting by himself, and he's kind of a loner a little bit, and so I went over and started talking to him because I'd been studying the Enoch book and the Enoch calendar, and and I started talking to him about that, and he didn't want anything to do. He didn't want to listen to anything I had to say about the calendar, because at that time he was on the lunar Jewish calendar, and so anyway, during all these years that I've been studying the calendar, I was on the Enoch calendar, and then later I got on the Rob Moore, listened to Rob and Boaz for several years, probably 6 or 7 years. I started keeping their calendar, and then I was on after they quit being on doing videos. I got on to Nick Vanderlane's calendar, and then here, in the last, I don't know, I guess a year probably, I've joined with Sarah and Gina on their calendar, the same as what he was talking about, the Gospel Worth Dying For calendar. But last night I listened to Jeremy's teaching, which was I think it was a couple months ago, I believe it said. And anyway, I listened to that. It was over 2 hours long. And I forgot about what Job said about how that day wasn't counted, because we had talked about that at one time, but I kind of forgot about that. But I'm starting to think that this group here that Jeremy has got here is I'm leaning toward your calendar as being correct. But the only thing I tried to do today, I called Sarah, talked to her, and she said, "Well, how does the priestly courses work on that calendar?" And I said, "Well, I think they would line up okay." So Sherry Freeland had sent me, probably 10 years ago, she had sent me the Dead Sea Scrolls calendar with the priestly courses for 6 years. And so I went there and I took all those 6 years and I combined them into one PDF file, and I searched for like Gamal, and it said it showed up 105 times, but then some of the other priests, it only showed up 104 times. So I don't understand that. I'm a little bit confused on the priestly courses, but I would think that since there's 24 priestly courses, and if they serve twice in a year, that would be 48 weeks, and then a couple weeks in Days of Unleavened Bread, and a couple weeks for trumpets or for tabernacles would make it 52 weeks. So I don't know. Can you go into that and clear that up a little bit for me? Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm glad Ken's here as well, because Ken's really good at the priestly course ordination. But we kind of spoke about it earlier, but to break it down again really quickly. So we see in the Mishmarot, or the priestly courses, there is the word Duke or Duka, just like Libby was speaking about. It's only found in a certain scroll. It's actually not found in 320, and a lot of the scrolls that they insert it in there, it's not actually in there. So when we take out the author's insertions and the brackets and the quotation marks, we're going to get the original text for what it says, and it's not speaking about any moon phases at all. And
Okay.
what we found out, according to Jubilees 12, verse 14, is when Abraham is sitting up through the night from the evening to the morning to observe one of these 4 leaders of the stars. And we see that same phrase from evening to morning, and Abraham was observing the stars. So we're coming to the conclusion that 320 is actually describing one of these 4 leaders of the thousands of stars spoken in Enoch 82. Because the moon, for one, 10 days each month, it's out during the day. So it's not always going to be out evening to morning. And it's not always out evening to morning on these dates that they claim either. So it cannot be from evening to morning. It's got to be something that is always from evening to morning. And that's one of these 4 leaders of the thousands of stars that are marking the 4 intercalated days.
Yeah. But what I'm asking is mainly is in 6 years, does all 24 priests serve the exact amount of same amount of time?
Yeah, so what we found is, their 6-year cycle actually doesn't even add up to the moon phases that they've claimed. And, we've been asking them for almost a year now with evidence proving that their method is wrong. It doesn't work. We've come to them almost for a year. They will not address our questions about it. So we do see these priestly courses in there, and it's not priestly cycles or courses or moons that determine the year at all. We don't see that anywhere written. What we do see is David, he made these priestly courses because the Levitical priests, they basically have to do their, sacrifices and offerings on Sabbath days, festival days. So they really had no rest or a break. So that's why David ordained these cycles to give the priests basically a break throughout the year. And we see that those courses match up to exactly what a week is, like 12 months, times 2, 24, and times 2, 48. You just break it all back down to 12 months. So it's not determined by any moon phases at all. That's actually what the Talmud and the Mishnah and the Tosefta do. And I'm sure those are writings of synagogue.
So in one year it would overlap because you got 24 and then you got 48 and then you got 4 more years for 52 weeks in a year. But then after 6 years, would it work out that every priest served the same amount of days in 6 years?
Well, that's the thing too, is we see there's all 6 years recorded in there. There could have been a 7th or something like that. We don't know for sure, but what we do know is, people, they try to use these priestly courses to say, look, this is what's determining the calendar. In fact, that's untrue. They're using them to determine something else.
Now, I'm not using the priestly courses to determine the calendar. Not at all. Yeah.
No, not you personally, but like Gina and Robert, they do these things.
Yeah.
So,
right.
And that's what we tried to point out to them. We're like, look, actually the priestly ordination proves that the priestly cycle starts with the divider day, because on the 8th day, with the divider day included, that would actually be the 6th day Sabbath, and they would be ready to do all the offering sacrifices right there on the first Sabbath of the year. So that's in the priestly ordination, which actually Ken knows a lot about. I don't know if you're available to speak about it, Ken, but feel free. But if they, go ahead.
I thought the priestly courses, one new one came in and the old one went out on the weekly Sabbath day. But is that correct or not? I don't know.
I spent a bit of time looking at this, Ray, and I was thinking along the same lines as you with regards to how they could fit within the year. And after a good week looking at anything that was priestly related and the duties involved, you find that there's a structure within the priests. You've got the Aaronic priests that are over the Levitical priesthood. So the Levites, like Jeremy said earlier, were basically doing everything 24/7 throughout the year. And King David looked at this and said, well, hang on a bit, I need to give these guys a bit of a rest. They need help. So he appointed families to help him out. And these are what the priestly courses are. They're nothing to do with the calendar. They're a bit of a red herring, actually. We can't base the calendar on priestly courses, that's for sure.
Yeah, I realize that, yeah.
A friend of mine that was on this lunar priestly courses sort of rhythm, after back and forth with him, and even spending time with him camping, we found out that actually he was saying it's a full moon today because that's what the priestly courses would have said. And I said, well, actually, no, the full moon is going to be in a couple of days' time. And he said, oh, no, but, you know, the world's corrupt and they change the times of the full moon on these websites and things. So I'm saying, well, I can see that it's not full. Even you can see it's not full. The priestly courses are nothing to do with the calendar. But while we were looking at the priestly courses and the priestly duties, what we found within that was this 8 days of consecration. And this 8 days of consecration, I believe, is what our Messiah is doing in his heavenly place. The year gets consecrated by Yah, and it's copied by the Aaronic priesthood at the beginning of the year. These are the 8 days at the beginning of the year, after the last Sabbath. The duties themselves, or the priestly quarters themselves, are designed just to help out the Levite priests that were doing all the hard work, pulling about the animals, sorting out all the sort of leftovers or whatever, all the hard work that they were doing because the Aaronic priesthood weren't involved so much within that sort of hard labour as such. So the priestly quarters, in a nutshell, are families that were designated to help out the Levites. And when we were also studying the priestly courses, we found out that the Levites can actually consecrate themselves, which then led to, well, how do they do this? And basically, the Levites just need to wash themselves and wash their clothing, whereas the Aaronic priesthood have a more serious consecration, that 8 day process, which does not tie into the priestly duties in any such way. So the priestly duties or the priestly courses are purely there, or were set up to help the Levites with all the hard work that they were doing within their temple service. As simple as that. There's nothing calendrical in them whatsoever.
Yeah, and that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And the 8 day consecration proves it as well, because that would only fit in right there at the head of the year where there is that 8 day gap.
Oh,
I have something I would like to add, if that's possible. I would
Yeah,
like
go
to
ahead.
read. There's a lovely friend of ours who I shared the calendar with her. She's in Ireland,
Ross.
and she teaches Hebrew at a college in Belfast. And once I had shared the calendar with her, she came to acknowledge that it was correct. And she decided that there was no point in teaching the Hebrew calendar to her students. I think there's quite a good number of these students because she teaches on, I think, 3 or 4 days every week with several classes, the Hebrew. And she decided that there was absolutely no point whatsoever in teaching the calendar of the Hebrew calendar because she didn't anymore believe that it was correct and that it was Jewish. And so therefore she changed to this Zadok calendar, and she teaches the classes each week in Belfast. She teaches them the Zadok calendar, and we have times where we meet up together and we discuss things when she comes off the boat over our side. And we had one time not many weeks ago, and we were discussing the fact that we very much enjoy coming on the Yahuah calendar group. And anyway, I was saying to her that we were going to meet up with Eddie, and I showed her what I was going to put together for my notes for this study. And so she sent me a little something to add to it, and I've incorporated it into the study notes. And I'd perhaps like to, if I may, just for a moment, just read out to you what she's written here, and I've put it in the notes. And I feel
please
myself...
do.
Sorry? Oh, right, sorry. I feel that it's very good what she's written, and what I feel strongly that people don't seem to recognize is the importance of that passage in 1 Samuel 20, where it speaks about the Ezel stone. I think people have just dismissed that as some sort of a pebble. But prior to the tabernacle, prior to the temple, there were standing stones, and you can see these in evidence in Israel themselves. And there's a passage in scripture which says, even the stones shall cry out. And of course, that's very relevant, because even the stones shall cry out. You ask yourself, what are they crying out? And they're obviously crying out, you know, from history. They're crying out a message to us. Look to these standing stones. They were prior to the tabernacle. They were prior to the temple that stood. And these are so old, these standing stones, that we ought to look to these stones. And I feel that the Ezel stone is one such stone that we should really, really seriously look into, because it parallels the scripture in Jubilees 2, verse 9, where it says, Yahuah hath appointed a great sign. The sign is the sign of the sun, for days, for months, for years, for jubilees, and for all seasons of the years. And so therefore, this is the sign. And that stone is El in the Hebrew. It means the stone of the sign. But it has a dual meaning. It also means the going stone. And it means the going forth of the year, which I think is incredible. But this lady, she's a lovely woman. This is what, I'll just read this page. This is what she wrote, and it's in relation to that stone. She says, what I can say, however, recognize, you remember in that passage in Samuel 20, it says, come to the place. It says it in that passage, the place. And this is very important, which is, I'll spell it, it's ha-makom, capital H, small a, capital M for mother, A-Q-O-M for mother, ha-makom. What I can say, however, recognize the place in quotes, which is ha-makom, is that it is a title and reference to Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh. And it appears in 1 Samuel 20, verse 19. The word makom, without the definite article of ha, in quotes, meaning the, in quotes, simply means a place. But when the prefix ha is found in front of makom, then it always means a place where Yahuah's divine presence is felt. For example, Genesis 13, verse 3, 14, brackets, referring to Bethel, close the bracket. Genesis 22, verses 4, 9, and 14, brackets, Mount Moriah, where Isaac was bound, close the bracket. Ha-Makom is now used by Jews to express the idea of Yahuah's omnipresent. At one time, it was known to be found in the temple, but whenever you come across the expression Ha-Makom, it is not that the writer was too lazy to say Bethel or Mount Moriah, etc. It is a deliberate reference to the fact that it is what we might term a thin place. For example, the place where Yahuah has made his presence felt. In 1 Samuel 20, verse 24, the word for feast is lehem, capital L, small e, capital H, small h, e, M for mother, brackets, as in Bet-lehem or Bethlehem, close the brackets. There are 7 different words for a feast in Hebrew. For example, capital H, H-A-G, slash Hag, C-H-A-G, brackets, a gathering in a large circle. I thought that was very interesting because over here we have these large circles. So capital H, H-A-G, A-G, Hagag, slash Hagog, C-H-A-G, A-G, to make a pilgrimage. Mishta, M-I-S, that's sugar, H-T-E-H, brackets, to drink, etc. But only one word for a fast, slash T for Tommy, S for sugar, U, M for mother, brackets, meaning a veil. People often say that lehem means bread or food, as in house of bread, Bethlehem. But a lehem feast is so named because it carries the idea of fighting with the dough, or kneading the dough where it is punched and stretched before it is proven. We know from 2 Samuel 11 verse 1 that the spring was the time when kings go out to war. The fact that this feast in 1 Samuel 20 is referred to as a lehem would suggest that it was the springtime when the warriors met to discuss battle plans and which wars would be worth fighting. I thought what she'd written there was really extremely interesting with the Makom. I think she's made a very good point there. And it's when we met up with her, she was referring to the fact the place is also the place of the covenant. And in the study that I've written out, it also, when I was looking into it, it says to judge. And when you see the shadow, he is sitting, David, as judge over the shadow. When the shadow appears in the straight line, he is sitting as judge to confirm that he has indeed seen the shadow on that day, the 20th of March. I thought that was most interesting. And in one of the other Bibles I have at home, it says, when the day of the deed, and it speaks of it as, the day of the deed. And I looked that up as well, and it's referring to the day of the deed is the day of the shadow. And it actually says that in one of the Bibles, the day of the shadow. And I thought that was fascinating. And it says, in another Bible, it says, when the business was in hand. And the terminology of when the business was in hand is meaning when the feast, meaning the spring equinox, the banquet, where Saul was at the table, was in hand. She brought out another point as well that's very interesting, when it says that I should not fail to sit at the table, at the king's table. And I would suggest that neither should we fail to sit at the king's table, on that very day of the spring equinox either, because if we're not seated at that table on that day, well, then we haven't begun. And obviously the meaning of the wording for the Rosh being head, it cannot be meaning any other time other than the spring equinox, because of the fact that it's Rosh Kodeshim, and that term is only applied to the month number 1. It's not applied to any of the other of the 11 months. It's only applied to the spring equinox only, making it stand out as being something special in its own right, as being Rosh, being head. But the fact that this matter of the table of reconciliation, and she was saying that, in fact, in the booklet, we've got a wonderful picture which Yvonne found for us, and it shows that on that day of the spring equinox, all those who were invited to the banquet, I'm referring obviously to the spring equinox day at Saul's place, that was a day where people would be invited, even though they were possibly enemies. And when you think of Psalm 23, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. I thought that was quite significant. That just came to my mind as I was writing the article. And I thought, wow, I think that meaning has that meaning, obviously, of at that particular timing when it's the spring equinox, when there was a table prepared, and the tribes would have been invited. Some of the heads of the tribes would have been invited, and this lovely picture shows them sitting on the floor in front of Saul and got the weapons all laid down on the floor. I thought that was interesting. And then afterwards would have followed the actual table where they would have sat at the table, but they're seated on the floor. And in a way, I couldn't help but relate the fact in my own mind, thinking to myself, isn't it funny how we're not, any of us, to come to the Passover? I know this is a different thing and a different timing of the year, obviously, but we're not to come to the table of the Passover either. If you've got a grievance against your brother, you should lay your weapons down. Lay your grievances at the altar and, pray about it and let yourself be reconciled before you come to that Passover table. And so not only is that table, I should not fail to sit at the king's table, it's the table of reconciliation. And are we not supposed to be reconciled to him? Absolutely. We are to be likewise reconciled to him. I thought that was quite significant. The other thing that stood out as I was writing the article was something else, and it was to do with, I'll just find it, it's, if I can find it, where was it? Yeah, the significance in this passage in 1 Samuel chapter 1, where you get both passages. 1 Samuel chapter 1, it deliberately is talking about the yearly sacrifice. So that is a special time of the year. And even when she had this child, Hannah, it was again a special time of the year. I think one of the Bibles says it was at the turn of the year, which is the Tekufah. And I thought that was interesting. And the fact that Eli sits in a special chair. He's sitting in an enthronement chair. And likewise, you've got the special seat that Saul is sitting in 1 Samuel 20. He likewise is sitting in a special seat as well. And that David's seat was likewise, his was a special seat. So I think people are making light slightly, well, somewhat, of the actual day of the equinox itself. I think in one of my Bibles, it says something else, which I thought was lovely. It says, on this eventful day. So I looked up, what does it mean on this eventful day? Well, obviously, what makes something into an eventful day? And obviously, the event they're talking about is the shadow. And I thought that was highly significant as well. In fact, I've forgotten to write that into the article, so I must remind myself to put that into the article. I'll write that in before it gets posted out. because I've forgotten about that one, but it says on that eventful day, and the event, of course, is the shadow itself. But isn't it amazing that Yahuah is our Father, Yahusha is our Savior, my Father and I are one, and the shadow comes to be one shadow, and that's him. He's the exact replica of the Father. He's the shadow. Sometimes you hear people say, me and my shadow. In other words, when a son looks like the father, they say, oh, he's the shadow of you. And that's what Yahusha is. He's the shadow of the Father, and he's the shadow of the equinox. People are making too much light of the matter of the equinox. The equinox is most certainly the start of the new year. It's the start of the biblical calendar. But people are dismissing it, looking for Wednesdays, and now they're looking for moon, it looks like, again. I thought we'd got past that one, but obviously not.
No, you're exactly right. They dismiss the Takufas as it's the secondary thing, put it on the back burner. They dismiss the stars, and then they're going back to the lunar stuff again.
Yeah,
Like it's right back on that same path. It's sad and unfortunate.
What do you think about this one as well? It's in it's going back to the 1 Samuel chapter 1, where it's talking about Eli the priest sat upon a seat by a post, which is Strong's number 4201 of the tabernacle. And I looked up that one about the post, and it's got the word funny enough, it's got the word what it looks like the word mezuzah. So that's obviously the Torah. So what is that doing that he's sitting by, he's sitting on the enthronement chair by a post which has got a doorpost, mezuzah, M-Z-U-W-Z-A-H, a doorpost. And later, of course, we get Solomon's temple, the pillars in Solomon's temple. And in the back of the article, I've got some lovely pictures which Yvonne got for me. And they are cracking pictures of these two pillars outside Solomon's temple, Yakin and Boaz. And on another picture that she got for me, it shows the capital at the top of one of the pillars, well, both pillars. And there are like chevrons which are hanging down. And I looked at these chevrons and I just decided to do a count of the chevrons. And lo and behold, there are 52 chevrons. I thought, oh, wow, look at that. And they're hanging on 7 clasps, which is the 7 days of the week and the 52 Shabbats. I thought that was amazing too. Yeah,
Praise
I
Yah.
thought that was wonderful. Yeah, and then it shows the pomegranates there, 200 pomegranates. And I thought, well, I don't know, I'm not quite sure. Somebody can have a look into that for me. Why are there 200 pomegranates? I know that they embroidered pomegranates on the bottom of the garments of the priesthood. And also, I think, if I'm right, that they embellished around the top of the wall in the temple. They embellished them with pomegranates there. And I also heard somebody say once that when you open up a pomegranate, they have 613 seeds in the pomegranate, which is like saying that it's the number of the laws in the Torah.
The 200 pomegranates could refer to the 200. No, sorry, I correct myself. I stand back. I'm getting too excited.
I think you're onto something, because that's basically the number we see when we go through scriptures. There's about 200 laws and commands. And we went over them a couple of weeks ago. And here, I'll get the website again, but Yahuah and the Torah, or YHWH and the Torah.net.
Yeah.
They'll have all the laws there, and there's there's about 200 of them.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, there's 200 pomegranates apparently, and I think this capital on the top of the one of the pillar, well, both pillars have got them. I just find that amazing. You know, when I was counting, and I'm counting from the bottom chevron to the very top chevron, and the 52, and I thought, well, that's denoting surely the 52 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, no
So
doubt.
I thought that was
Wow,
quite amazing.
that really is.
Yeah, but I'll go when the photocopy shop is open. There's a girl in there who's really kind to me because she knows that I'm not good at technology at all. I'm hopeless, but she will be able to do something for me where she can. Well, there must be somebody. She'll be very good at this. She can scan it or something, and I'll be able to send that to you tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome.
Yeah. So that you can have a look. But will the pictures come out okay, or will they be blurry?
You'll have to send them to find out.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll find out, I
I mean,
guess.
they look a very good picture. They're quite in detail, but
Yeah.
whether on the photo, well, it won't be a photocopy, will it? She'll scan it, and does something come through good on a scanner?
Usually it's pretty decent.
Oh, well, that's
So
all right then. That's
yeah,
fine. That's
no, it'd be
smashing.
great. I'd love to
Yeah,
see them. That'd be awesome.
right. Now, what I'd like you now to talk to me and you teach me is this matter of I was in a bit of a tiz-was getting myself ready for going off to see this Eddie Chumney, the group, and when I picked up, I think it was when I just come home, either Wednesday night or Thursday, it might have been, and there was something on the telegram, and it was saying about another 8 days and another 8 days, and that's to do with presumably when they sanctified the actual temple from First Chronicles 29. But I would like you to teach me that.
So that's what we see in well, I think it's Hezekiah, where they speak about they sanctified the land, and then they sanctified the house of Yahuah, and they were all finished by the 16th because it was 2 8-day periods. So it would be 16.
Oh, I know. I've got it now. Yeah, I
Yeah,
looked at that a long time ago, and I thought there's another confirmation, you see, that by the 18th they were ready. By the 18th?
exactly. And that's what we were trying to show as well,
Yeah,
because someone had brought a question about it, and we were saying, as we walk it through scriptures, you can see, they finished the consecration, which was the 18th, and then the next day after the consecration was completed, because you have to allow it to complete, then they went to the king and was like, oh, hey, we consecrated it. And then he was like, cool. Then he rose up the next morning to do it, which would fall right there on the 18th, lining up with the Shabbat day.
Hey,
yeah.
can I jump in? So this was where, like, we were being questioned. So which day did the priest go to King Hezekiah and tell him everything's been purified? What do you think, Libby?
Which day did he go?
Yeah. If it was 8 days and 8 days, did they go on the 16th or did they go on the 17th to him?
I don't know is the answer to that one. I don't know. I'd have to look. But more than likely they would have gone on the 17th when they said they were ready for the 18th.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what I was thinking too. And then the argument was that they went on the 16th.
No?
And then that the 17th would be Shabbat. That was the whole argument why we were walking through that. And I'm like, well, if it took 8 days and then 8 days, well, they weren't done on the 16th day. It says they made an end on the 16th day, like that was the last day of it, and then they
All
went to
right.
Hezekiah.
Right.
So that,
Well, I would certainly think that we know for a fact, don't we? Anyway, even if you didn't put this piece in, that the 18th is most definitely is the Shabbat, because the dates in the Dead Sea Scrolls, where you've got missing pieces, you can fill the missing pieces in by just going either forwards or backwards, and you can get all the dates for all of the Sabbaths, from even the bits that are perfectly intact. You can either go forwards, backwards, and you still land up with the proper, correct dates for the Sabbaths.
Right. So I'm putting those scriptures in the chat here so that you can see them again.
All right, lovely.
Yeah, so these are the three. Oh, hold on, let me add, sorry.
But we were basically just going over it to show, like, hey, look, this also proves
That's any message you both
the
should
date on calendar.
Did you take screenshots?
Me? No,
Yeah.
I can't take screenshot. I don't know how to do a screenshot.
Hezekiah seems to be a really interesting read, because he seems to be doing double of everything. He doubles up on the year at the beginning. He then doubles up on the was it the second Passover? And he always seems to be quite excited to add on another week after the week celebration. If you look at that first year that Hezekiah was ruling, he seems to be doing everything twice, and I'm not sure whether it's something that he's trying to.
I think he's being controlled by the princes.
Yeah, absolutely. He's sort of saying, right, okay, let's make sure. Let's get rid of any badness that has happened before. Let's just double down and do it twice just to make sure. I mean, it's not comical, but it's complete reverence. Do you know what I mean? Wanting to make doubly sure that we're getting this right, or he was getting it right.
Well, he was just sneak, didn't he, to talk to Jeremiah? Like, he was afraid of the princes. So they were obviously practicing abominable things.
It's almost like he wants to cancel out what has happened before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, if it's happened, let's make sure it's not going to happen again. Let's do it twice to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Just to make sure, especially at that time, they were just coming back to it.
Do you think the showbread was baked the day before the Sabbath or the morning of the Sabbath?
Oh, they were doing it all day on the Sabbath.
Speak now.
Because it was, it says, and kept hot, and to be kept hot. I suggest that it was baked just the last job before the priest was going off duty and the new one, Ahimelech, was coming on duty. It would have been the very last job before the sun rose on the Shabbat. So he did it in the last hour of the preparation day, and he kept the bread hot.
Okay, and the reason I asked that is because actually in what I posted, they talk about they mentioned the showbread. They came to Hezekiah and said, "We've cleansed all the house of Yahuah and the slaughter place of ascending offerings with all its utensils, and the table of the showbread with all its utensils."
Wow, that's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, so it just kind of like made me think, so when was the showbread made to put back on the table then?
Well, we need to look up that a bit more, but I would imagine, you see, we're not supposed to bake on the Shabbat, so I would think it was the last thing that they actually did before the sun rose on that Shabbat.
Well, that's where I found in Jubilees, it speaks about as long as you have everything prepped, it's okay to cook on the Sabbath and, make drinks even. Jubilees chapter 50, I believe. But it
Well,
goes into specific detail, and it says, you shall do no work, don't do this, don't do that, except you may cook what you cook, bake what you bake for eating and drinking, because it's a Sabbath day meant to be enjoyed.
what about that scripture where it says, "And bake what you will bake today"?
So that one
Yeah.
is speaking about the manna bread.
Jeremy, you're fading in and out.
And when
Can you hear
when
me?
it says
Can you
to
hear me?
seethe, to seethe
So,
means to keep it by.
so the verse you were speaking about, Marissa, is about the manna
Yeah.
bread in context. That whole chapter is about the manna bread itself. So it's speaking about you must bake it the day before, because the next day the manna bread would go bad. So if you kept it and then cooked it, it would go bad. So you'd have to cook the manna bread before,
Right.
because he said that specifically because that was the thing. You have to prep and gather all your stuff, of course, and then you keep the fire going. You don't let it go out. You just keep it going, which is really easy to do. But you keep the fire going. You have all your stuff prepped and ready to go, and that way you can cook it. And that's why we see.
Weren't they being punished during that time with the manna because they were also told not to leave their homes?
I don't know if they're being punished with the manna. I'd have to look into that. Interesting. I never heard that.
Like they were complaining about the manna, and that's when all of that happened, because that used to confuse me, and I would not cook or even want to do anything on Shabbat. And then I investigated it. It's like they were complaining, and y'all told them, I'm going to give you this manna. And that's when he started giving instructions about that particular time, which I don't know. I feel like that there's a principle there that, we're missing, but I don't think it's about cooking. But yeah, because it also says don't leave your dwelling place. So if you were going to go by those principles on Shabbat, every Shabbat, you couldn't even leave your homes.
Do you know what I wonder about this? I've thought about this one for quite a while. I mean, if I didn't, I live roughly 1 hour away from Jim and Liz's house. So for me to have fellowship, I need to drive. So I don't think it's related. You can't leave your home, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to enjoy the Shabbat with having fellowship with one another, because I'd be stuck in my home on my own. But what I wonder, and I've thought about this quite a lot, is the fact that I think it's talk. In fact, I'm pretty certain that when it says don't leave your homes, it's in reference directly to carrying a burden out of your house to go to work.
Yeah.
And
I also think that when it says about the manna, it also says that it's got something to do with the fact, and when the sun rose, it melted.
Yeah. And we see Messiah. Messiah was walking through the field, gleaning off of it on a Sabbath day. So we see,
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was always going here and there on the Shabbat day. Yeah, because
yeah,
I've known several others that said, "Oh, you can't leave your home," and they close themselves away. I'm like, but what is the example of our Messiah? He
no,
was walking and teaching and
yeah,
healing.
yeah,
I think you could replace the word homes with family. Don't leave your family. Stay with your family. Be with your family.
Yeah, yeah,
oops.
interesting. Yeah, no, that's a good
Just,
point too.
is it done?
But yeah, we see, there
I
were
could barely
specific.
hear you, Jeremy.
What's that again?
You keep going in and out.
Oh, it's my signal. Hold on. Let me see if I can fix it.
And we know that they were able to leave their homes to go to the temple on a Shabbat.
Yeah.
So they are allowed to go out of the house.
Praise
Yeah,
Yah.
yeah. Can you hear me better?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So yeah, so the verse in Jubilees about taking a long journey is actually in regard to working as well, but
Yeah.
also taking a long.
I think that we've got to put that into the equation, the fact that it's directly in relation to, uh, you know, earning money from it, going out to actually out of your dwellings for
Or
business
even carrying
purposes.
that, yes, or even when it mentioned carrying that burden. We carry spiritual burdens, worries, and or contention. We are to place that and put that behind.
Um, you know, it's the same thing to me as when it speaks about. I've had somebody come to my home many years ago, and I have a wood burning stove, and I rely on that wood burning stove to keep myself warm to enjoy the Shabbat. And somebody came many years ago, and they said to me, "Aha, Libby, there you go, caught you out. I saw you put a match to the fire." And I thought to myself, I looked at him and I said, "I don't believe what he just said." I mean, the thing is that when it says you should not light a fire, kindle a fire on the Shabbat, that is not in reference to putting a match to the fire at all. It's a direct reference to burning the furnaces, you know, which was work, you know, smelting, metalworks. It's to do with earning an income from doing the smelting with the iron foundries.
Absolutely
It's
right.
it's nothing to do with keeping myself cozy by lighting a fire to the putting a match to the fire.
Yeah, absolutely right. So stay within your home, stay within your family, have time together, praise Yah together. It's nothing to do with stay within your homes locked up and don't go anywhere. It's not a lockdown. It's a time for
Our
celebration.
Father loves us and He wants us to be barakah.
Yeah, I mean
Absolutely.
this is my family here. I consider them more my family than my own flesh and blood, you know. And if I wasn't able to come across here, which is a 1-hour drive for me, I would feel as though I wasn't really able to really enjoy the Shabbat on my own, because this is my family here. And
Right.
you know, if I couldn't enjoy having family on the Shabbat, I would feel very deprived.
I'm just going
It's too legalistic, isn't it? Stay within your homes. It's just too legalistic. It's enjoy your
Yes.
day. Enjoy your day. Praise Yah. Go where you need to go. It's not stay within your homes locked up. It's be with the family that you love that can worship Yah.
Yeah, he said not to forsake ourselves, the assembling together.
That's right. Do not forsake the assembling together of yourselves. Yeah. So how if I stayed at home in my house, I mean, obviously, if I had to, I'd have to. But at the moment, I've got a choice, and I can travel and come here and spend the entire day right through till late at night, and sometimes often, nearly midnight, enjoying my family here.
Praise Yah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And they were all gathering back at that time as well. They didn't have a
Yeah,
synagogue because you couldn't go to it.
yeah.
Nowhere did I see the example of them shutting themselves away in their homes.
Amen.
And that's it. Yeah, and we can't be just shut and locked in our homes. Honestly, that's actually a tradition of Judaism. And they have no problem with hiring goyim to even flip the light switches on and off for them. They even pre-break up toilet paper in the squares because
Oh
they
my
consider,
goodness.
yeah, it's it's wild. And
I
that's
actually
true.
met somebody that would actually put tape over all of her light switches on Shabbat to remind her not to switch them on.
And they misunderstand, and not only is that a tradition of men, but they're misunderstanding what work is. It's in context to monetary gain,
Exactly.
your job, things like that. Like, don't do any of that.
I completely agree. I know
Yeah,
somebody who puts tape over the light switches as well. Yeah. Oh,
that's going too far. Some, they
Yeah, it's
won't
very sad.
turn on, they don't turn on the engine in their car because they say it's kindling a fire. And it's like, really all these wild theologies, and it just makes it super burdensome to try to follow.
Couldn't we look at it as a spiritual sense too, not kindling a fire? In other words, causing contention on the Shabbat, purposely causing contention. So not
Well,
just a
yeah,
physical, but a spiritual sense.
I agree.
Good hit, Jennifer. Beautiful.
And yeah,
Praise Yah.
kindling a fire took a lot of work back then. They didn't have lighters or matches. They would have to use stones and sticks and rub them together to make fires. That's why it was a lot of work. But once you had the fire going, as long as you had the wood gathered, just like we see the example of, if you have that wood gathered to feed the fire constantly, it's not going to go out. So you no longer have to kindle it. It's already going. But, same with
I
like oh, go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, sorry.
No, no worries.
With my wood burner, this is the way that I run the wood burner. I make sure that all the wood, well, it's already on the property all the time, but I make sure that the wood has come in to the lounge on the day before the Shabbat. So I don't bring wood in from outside, which is in my garden, into the house. It's already in the house, stacked alongside the fire, so that it's ready for running all day on the Shabbat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good example. And yeah, and Judaism likes to take it to that next level and place a burden, and you can see.
Traditions of men, Jeremy.
Yeah, precisely,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's exactly what Messiah was against too. He was against all these traditions of the Pharisees. And he was like, "Hey, you guys are making it burdensome, and it's not supposed to be a burden. It's supposed to be more like a fellowship, not only with our family, but with Yahuah as well. And just laying in your bed all day and not being able to move, that's a burden. Then you're just locked up in your house all day, can't go fellowship. We don't see any examples of that. So yeah, It's truly the traditions of man. Absolutely.
Well, it's a very isolated feeling. Very lonely, in my opinion, too. Very lonely and isolated. Not at all how, resting is supposed to actually be.
Break up
He
this
made
conversation,
oops, sorry.
but I'm sorry, since we have you, Miranda, and since we have you, Libby, I wanted to touch base, Libby, with you about where we are on the calendar timeline of things. And I don't know if you're aware, but we do believe that we are post-millennial reign. I was wondering your thoughts on that, where you were with that, because you did mention a little bit that we were in the final, but I wasn't sure if you were meaning like before judgment or before the millennial reign. Was wondering if we could maybe talk a little bit and kind of merge what we're finding on that.
Referring to Enoch that I mentioned earlier on, and we're only talking about chapters 1 through to 6. Enoch is clearly stating that at the beginning of his writings, he goes straight to judgment. There is no millennial reign before judgment. It's straight. There is a millennial reign before judgment, but he goes straight to judgment, meaning that the last generation are before the judgment. And if you read past into chapter 6, it's then describing the millennial reign. And when you read that in the order that he's set it out, it reads that the millennial reign happens. How can I say? He mentions the light coming into the earth, and the light is set on the earth, and then the millennial reign begins, meaning that Yeshua comes. He's the light. He sets himself on the light as light, and then from there the millennial reign has happened. If you know what I mean.
Now, what's funny about that one, what you've just said there, is are we not considered, and hopefully we are part of these first fruits, but are we not considered to be children of the light?
Yes.
And I see that as when he says, Yahuah will not always strive with man, his days shall be 120. And I don't know whether it was possibly Nick van der Laan who said it at one time years ago, but I think it might have been him. And he said that from the time of Adam until the time that they entered into the land were 50 Jubilee cycles. And the time from when they were in the land until the time that we're in right now is another 70 Jubilee cycles. And we're coming to the close of that 70th Jubilee cycle. And if that's correct, well then either something will happen this year or maybe next year. But I think we're very, very close, really seriously close indeed. And although perhaps I might be the lone voice in this one, I don't know. You probably all think I've lost my rocker in a minute. But 16 or 20 years ago, I read a book from a man in America. His name is Bill Schultz, S-H-U-L-T-S, sugar. And this book was called Come Away With Me. And when I read this about 16 or 18 years ago, it resonated with me tremendously. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And what he was talking about basically is he was outlining in this little small, not a big book to read. You can read it in a matter of a few hours. And he was outlining the fact that he believed that throughout the scriptures, Yahuah has made a way of escape for those who are the remnant. And I believe myself, I mean, I'm not asking everybody else to believe the same way as me, obviously, but this is my personal belief. I think that when I read that book, Come Away With Me, I think he's right. I really do. He outlined all these situations, and although Noah went up, I know that the ark came back down again because, you know, there's a time for everything. It wasn't Noah's time that he was to go up permanently. He obviously went up in the air and he came back down again. And then he made the sacrifices. But you think of Lot, the angels came to the door, knock, knock. He opens the door and he says, I want a word with you, Lot. He said, bring, I'm going to tell you that, you know, this place is going to be destroyed. So tell your family that you can, you know, avoid what's coming and you to come and follow me. And of course, his sons-in-law laughed about it, but the daughters went and the wife went. And they were removed before the wrath. And when it says that it is not, we are not appointed unto wrath, and the 7 years of the tribulation, I don't believe it's just the latter 3.5 years. I personally, myself, I believe that the whole of the 7 years is going to be his wrath, and escalating by the day as you come forward from the first 3.5 years and getting you know, more and more and more, worse and worse and worse, until at the end it's absolutely diabolical, you know, when you get into the end. But the first 3.5 years will be equally as bad. Well, perhaps not equally is the right word, but it will escalate day by day, getting worse and worse and worse, the whole of that 7-year period. I just think that I believe, you know, it says, for the elect's sake, I will cut those days short. Now, when you think about that scripture, I will cut those days short. Does that mean that for us who are trying to seek him and find him and follow his ways, will those days be cut short by that 7-year period? I personally believe yes, I really do. I see him as a loving father who loves us as his children, and does he want us? If we are considered to be his bride, does he want to give you a good slap round the ear holes with the rolling pin so that you're black and blue before he takes you midpoint of the tribulation, the 3.5 years into it? Does he want to see his bride, a good few bruises, left, right and centre, a crack around the head, you know, before you get to this point? I don't think so. I see him as a loving, loving father. He says, blessed are those, Baruch are those who have believed and yet have not seen. So we have not seen, but the disciples did. They were eyewitnesses, but we have not seen. And we are really in a different time scale. We're in a time where we're having to walk by faith and not by sight. Completely, we are walking by faith.
I agree, but I'm not sure what you're trying to say with like the 7 years and the tribulation. Do you think that Messiah came back in that generation right after his death?
I think that he's about to return, but I think that he will come, as it says. It says, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but shall be changed, which is Enoch chapter 50. It says, for the holy and the elect, a change will come in the latter days. And I think that's what that is paralleling. And I think this 7-year period, I think we're in the last part of the bowl 6 on the menorah. And I think that we've literally got a very, very short, thin space between the 7 years beginning. And I think that possibly, you know, is it Psalm 91? It says, only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked. Where do we look and see from? Do we possibly look and see from the gallery up top? I think possibility. That's what I think. I think we will see
So,
what's
are
happening
you
on earth.
saying like a rapture of some kind?
I do.
Okay, so
I know the word rapture is not in the scriptures, but the word harpazo is definitely in the scriptures in many places. And the word
okay,
harpazo actually means a violent snatching away from harm's path, harm's way.
so there's a couple scriptures that not a lot of people they kind of neglect. And it's Messiah, talking to his disciples. And when he's speaking to them, it sounds in all these verses that he's coming back soon, like as in their generation. I think there was even like something that he said where he said he was coming back in their generation and all eyes will see him, every knee will bow, that kind of thing. Miranda, could you better explain that? Because it's something that I think a lot of us neglect to see who and what he was talking to, not in some remote generation, but that Messiah was talking to those people at that time, that they were going to see him coming back in the clouds then, and that those who had pierced him would even see him.
Well, they in their time, he deliberately allowed them to think that otherwise they would have been discouraged. He allowed them to think that it was going to happen in their time. But he would have obviously known it wasn't going to happen and that there was the bowl 5 and bowl 6, because that other scripture that I just spoke about before, it says that, well, we know he came in the 4th millennia because each one of those bowls on the menorah represents not only the days 1 to 7, but they also represent, each bowl represents 1,000-year period. So we know that he came and he lived and he walked and he died in the 4th bowl, the 4th generation, the 4th millennia rather.
How do you
And
get
then,
that? How do you figure that he did that in the 4th generation?
well, everything parallels it, because the day that he was immersed by Yochanan, he was on the 4th day, spring equinox day, when he was immersed.
How do you
Which
know
is,
that he was immersed on the spring equinox day?
well, I think that's fairly clear. The fact that he was immersed, the heavens opened, and the voice from above of Yahuah says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And so it says that Satan entered into him immediately, and it says that he went for 40 days up into the wilderness, which is obviously, to me, it's the mountains of the Qumran that he went. So he was immersed on the spring equinox day. He was away for the whole of those first 30 days, and then you've got 10 days left. So he returned back in the 2nd month on the 10th day. Now we both know that we all know that in the 1st month of the calendar, on the 10th day, it represents the selection of the lambs, and in the 2nd month, it also represents the selection of the lambs. So he was away for those 40 days, so that brought you to the 10th day of month 2. And when he walked back from the mountains of the Qumran, he came back down again and sees Yochanan. He's only 8 miles up the road. And he says John sees him coming, and he turns his head and he says, "Behold, the Lamb of Yah, who taketh away the sin of the world." So that, to me, strikes very much so of the fact that it's the selection of the Lamb on the 10th day. And then, of course, he does not keep the Passover with John, but he kept the 2nd Passover. And I personally, this is my own view, but I don't think that that his ministry was a 3.5-year ministry. I believe he fulfilled the picture of the lamb, which was a spotless lamb and 1 year old. And that's what the Torah says, that it was to be a 1-year-old lamb and spotless, sinless lamb. And that's what I think Yahushua was. And so therefore, his very, very first Passover while he was now in the ministry, because when Yochanan immersed him, originally Yochanan protested and said, oh no, it ought to be the other way around. It should be you immersing me, not the other way. And he says, suffer it to be that all scripture be fulfilled. And so he immersed him. And then he says, I must decrease and you must increase. So the office of the high priest, the Zadok high priest, was taken at that point willingly off Yochanan and placed on the shoulders of Yahusha. And so he became the Zadokim high priest at that moment when he's immersed in the water. And then, of course, he gets up the mountain and he's tempted for those 40 days. He comes back down on the 10th day of month 2. And so although his ministry began on Equinox Day, as also all the kings of Israel are all anointed on Equinox Day, and that's absolutely confirmed in those passages you were talking about previously, which is in 1 Chronicles chapter 29 and in 2 Chronicles 29 or 30, I think it is. It also confirms that too, that they were all anointed. They start on that day of the equinox. And so it's very fitting that Yahushua also, as the King of all kings, he was also immersed on the equinox day. And it comes back down on day 10 of the second month. And then the clock starts. Well, the clock started obviously for him in his ministry on Equinox Day, but then he goes round the circuit for just the 1 year. And when he comes up to top dead center again, he's only 14 days off the timing where he's sitting down at the Passover table just 1 year later. So he's circuited round from beginning on month 2 at the Passover, and he's going round and finishing in the next year, the 1 year ministry, and he finishes at the Passover of the next year. I think it's John 6 verse 4. I think it was that man, what's his name, Michael Rood and Nehemiah Gordon. They proved categorically that in the scrolls they had added, the scribes had added the verse in John 6 verse 4, and it had been added to make it look as though he had 3 Passovers, but he didn't. He only had 2 Passovers. The first where he began in the second month, and he finished in a year later in the first month on the 15th day he was crucified. Yeah, and it was just a 1 year ministry, and I think that was probably right. Don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think we all believe that too. Jeremy had explained that to us too, that it was leaning more toward a 1 year ministry also.
Yeah.
I think what Katrina was trying to ask is, we've recently kind of come to the conclusion that we could actually be past Yahushua's second coming because of what he told his disciples, that there would be some that were standing there that would not see death until they saw him coming in the clouds. And we've been searching scriptures and listening to studies, and we believe that we are post-millennial reign, and that we are actually in the little season that Revelation talks about. And
The end of the little season, yeah.
yeah. And we're actually waiting for the final judgment, the end eternity.
How do we go about that one with what you've just said, because of the fact that judgment is on the house of Yahuah now?
Well, so Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD.
Yeah.
And Yahushua told the women that were weeping at the stake when he was being crucified to not cry for him, but to cry for their children because of what they were about to go through 40 years after his crucifixion, which was the coming. And
70.
so, right. So that was judgment on the house. And
Right, but it's not actually when he's referring to judgment is on the house of Yahuah. Now, I think the house of Yahuah is us. We're the first fruit.
so we tend to believe that the first fruits were actually the resurrected saints during the first resurrection, which we see the first resurrection happening when Yahushua rose from the dead. He had those that he released in Sheol rise with him, and they went into the holy city, and people saw them. So those that were raised would not have experienced a second death, but those were actually the ones, because he said, blessed are those that partake in the first resurrection, to whom the second death hath no power over.
Yeah.
And so there's a difference between the first and the second resurrection. And we see the first resurrection happening when he was resurrected as well. So they're two different, so there are two different distinct timelines that are kind of at play here. And so, yeah, I think that's what Katrina was asking. We're asking where you think that we are in the timeline, because we tend to think that we're beyond, and we believe that we are in this season of deception, where after the millennial reign had already taken place, that we are now at the part where Hasatan was released again to deceive the nations to make war with the camp of the saints.
Sarah's one of our other people who understand this too. I mean, we're all pretty much on the same page, well, most of us. But Sarah was the one who opened my eyes to this, and so was Adrian, but she's not here anymore. And yeah, so and Marissa's been really digging into books like Baruch, Second Baruch, and Esdras.
Second Esdras.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, and it would make a lot of sense to me that we are in that now, because knowing about what Messiah did when he came here and he took back the authority of the priesthood, right? Yochanan transferred it back to him. And then when he was gone for a bit, you know, the gospel was preached by those who Messiah instructed to be able to tell the people that his coming was very, very soon. And it would just make complete sense to me that he did come back in that generation to erect back the Melchizedek priesthood in the reign, because when he died, he went up and he gathered the saints to bring them back up to be able to rule and reign for 1,000 years. And that's kind of and this would be everywhere, the whole earth. And that's why we have all these cathedrals all over the world that can definitely not be built by human means, by no measure. I mean, these cathedrals are literally healing, places of healing, and the construct is just beyond our scope of understanding, I think. So they're very much angelic, and you know, there's bells. The bells were taken out of all these and buried, and all these things. And so I feel like there's a lot of evidence to be able to support that Yahusha did come back, ruled and reigned, took the priesthood back. And now when we're looking at even the Statue of Liberty, you know, the depiction of Lucifer, really. And when that was erected in 1776, when, you know, you could see the chain being broken, symbolizes the release of Hasatan himself. It's a symbol for us to realize what season we are in, to me. because everything, with this understanding the whole calendar mess up. I just don't see Messiah coming back, taking the priesthood, and then waiting 2,000 years. I can't see it. And plus, we could use the menorah method for that for sure, but Enoch actually describes a 10-week prophecy, not a 7-week prophecy. And I think we get confused with that too, because there's actually 10 weeks that he's talking about.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Libby. This is Sarah. I was having this very same conversation last night with a brother, and he was very surprised, which we all were, because we've been taught it's all future. And for years, I would be confused as the different prophecies, but there are, people always say, well, what about this prophecy and that prophecy, and it hasn't been fulfilled yet. But there are some prophecies that are fulfilled in the millennial reign and others that are fulfilled in the final reign, the final kingdom. And those two separate timelines are separated by Satan's season of deception. Yahusha's kingdom is still here, but it is hidden to those who don't see. In Ezra, in the 4th book of Ezra, in chapter 7, it says that kingdom is hidden, that the city and the saints are hidden. And so right now we're in a time where they're hidden, but there's so much evidence of the prophecies pertaining to the millennial reign have been fulfilled. And then there's the prophecies pertaining to the eternal kingdom that comes at the end that have not been filled. But all of us have previously to understanding the difference have conflated the two different kingdom timelines. It's the same kingdom, they're just manifested here on earth at different times, separated by Satan's season of deception where we're in now. But the mistake is conflating those two kingdoms. And the fact that, of course, they have really messed with the timelines and scrubbed history for the purpose of confusing the people doesn't make it easy. They have scrubbed history, they've changed timelines, they've changed the translations to cause just enough confusion that we really don't see it until either somebody helps us understand it or the Ruach wakes us up. But I could share on the our Telegram channel different scriptures that can prove that it has happened, and then there's the evidence throughout the realm that great tribulation happened as well as other resets. I hope this is helping rather than causing confusion, Libby.
Well, and just like the confusion with the calendar, look how much we've had to dig into the just to find what we have about the calendar. It's the same thing with basically kind of putting the ages back where they're supposed to be. And in Esdras 2, which is a book I love, it describes every single person being in the age appointed to them. So, not to say that we still don't have a purpose, because we very much do. But it really is a scramble to try to kind of put things back where they're supposed to be, just like we see with this calendar. And this calendar, I feel like, better helps understand where we are in the timeline as well.
Do you want me to share a scripture that I got the other day? It's in Ezra's. I was looking at Ezra's when you brought it up. It's in Ezra's 35. Sorry, Ezra chapter 2, 4th Ezra chapter 2, verse 35. Be ready to the reward of the kingdom, for the everlasting light shall shine upon you forevermore. Flee the shadow of this world. Receive the joyfulness of your glory. I testify my Saviour openly. I receive the gift that is given you. Be glad, giving thanks to him that has led you to this heavenly kingdom. Rise up and stand, behold the number of those that be sealed, listen to this word, that be sealed in the feasts of Yahuah, which are departed from the shadow of the world, and have received the glorious garments of Yahuah. Close.
What scripture was that again? Second Ezra.
It's fourth Ezra or second Ezra, sometimes referred to as second Ezra, but it is his fourth book. First Ezra is obviously in the canonized scriptures, and you've got Nehemiah, which is sometimes classed as his second book, Esther, which is classed as his third book, and then fourth Ezra, which is taken out the scriptures by the Roman Catholic Church. But it's fourth Ezra it is, and it's chapter 2, verses 35 to 39.
That was really beautiful. But yeah,
It's lovely.
sealed.
I sent it to my brother.
The
My brother's
sealed.
struggling with the piece, so I sent him that.
Jim is just saying that he sent it to his brother because we've got a few of us in this country who really sadly they've gone for you over there as well, but they've gone into this thinking that we are out of covenant because we are keeping the festivals, and so they've had a good old go at us
Freemasonry.
for the fact that we are wanting to still uphold the festivals, and they're saying that we're out of covenant, out of our Father's will, and because we want to keep the festivals. And yet the passage that Jim has just read out, I feel that actually is confirming that we are to keep the festivals.
My brother's favourite book as well, strangely enough.
Yeah, Jim's brother, it's his favourite book, and he often used to quote from that book, and that's the very book that's telling you that even in the feasts, and yet he's denying that the feasts are ever still in existence. He says that they're gone. Oh, shame.
We've had
I probably need to look at this, what you're talking about, because this isn't something that I'm any good at, this thing. Whether you're talking about the little season, I need to look more. So if Katrina wants to send something on the Telegram for me, I'll have a look at that and we'll share it between us all.
I think what's in question here is Yeshua obviously spoke to the people near and dear to him, saying that you will see me again. He wasn't referring to a time 2,000 years later on. He was referring to an immediate time. After he was crucified, for 40 years, they would carry out the temple ritual of the Day of Atonement. But unfortunately, the crimson cord never turned white for 40 years. And for 40 years after he had died, he returned and established his kingdom here on earth, destroying the temple and setting up his kingdom here on earth after 40 years after his death, which would then be the millennium reign, after which we're now gone through these dark ages, or whether they were dark or not too sure, hidden history. What we believe, or some of us within this calendar, is that the millennium reign has already happened, and that Satan has now been released from his pit, and we're in the season, Satan's little season.
Right. Am I right in saying, you see, I have some friends who used to, years ago when my husband was alive, they used to come and they used to be part of our little fellowship, and they used to keep the feasts, and they used to keep the Shabbats with us and everything, but they left our little group, and when we asked them why had they left, they said everything has been fulfilled already. And I spoke to
People
somebody
out
and they
there
said it,
think that.
and they were telling me that it's the word preterism. And when I went to see them just a couple of weeks ago, they said everything that's in the Bible has already been fulfilled and it's gone.
I
That's
don't believe that.
incorrect. This is not preterism, Libby. This is not
Right.
preterism at all.
Yeah.
Sometimes people accuse us of pushing preterism, but preterism is definitely a false teaching. There are most certainly prophecies that have not yet been fulfilled, and the final kingdom has not yet come yet. The earth is the new heaven and the new earth has not occurred yet, and the wicked have not been annihilated yet. The final kingdom comes after that. Of course, that's where, and they don't even understand that 1,000 years actually means literally 1,000 years. So, yeah, that's really sad that they took up that teaching, because it is definitely a false teaching. I heard about it 20-something years ago. My niece and nephew got into it, but then after studying it back then, we realized there was too many prophecies that had yet been fulfilled. But it took me another 20 years to figure out that the millennial reign had already passed.
Yeah. So where in the timeline do you see all this now?
Well, this discussion we were having last night, first of all, everybody's pretty much in agreement that the timeline has been skewed. The scripture says that they will change the times and the seasons, which they have. We don't know how bad the timeline has been skewed. However, there is some evidence, very good evidence, that they've actually added 700 years to the timeline, so we need to collapse that 700 years. There was a archaeological and geological professor that has a video, and he's not a Christian, he's just a secular guy, but with very good evidence, he showed how they have skewed the timeline by at least 700 years. I'd be happy to post that video. It's quite compelling. So I said that I prefaced that to say this. This discussion we were having last night in our group, many believe that the fall of Jerusalem around 70 AD, there was actually a 7-year tribulation. There were several years prior and after that it was just horrific things were happening. And so much of the prophecy about the Great Tribulation was fulfilled during that time, and that the millennial reign happened shortly after the fall of Jerusalem and went for 1,000 years up to 1,070 something AD. Okay, and after that, Satan was loosed. However, it's really quite obvious that around the 1700s that we know of, and the 1700s that we're accustomed to, all hell broke loose, and all hell's been breaking loose ever since. I mean, wars that absolutely destroyed cities, old world cities throughout America and Europe, like the Revolutionary War, the Civil War. Those were all campaigns to destroy evidence, and World War I and II were campaigns to destroy evidence in the European continent. And then you have all the great fires that happened within probably a 75-year period, hundreds and hundreds of fires that destroyed city after city after city throughout the realm. And then there was the mud flood. Okay, that all happened after the 1700s. But if you collapse those 700 years between, let's say, 1070 something AD and the 1700s, and you collapse that, it appears that those 1,000 years, when they ended, then all hell broke loose when Satan was released in the 1700s, but we need to collapse at least 700 years there. It makes sense. Now, we're not exactly sure on any of this because history has been scrubbed, timelines have been changed. However, this is what it appears to make the most sense. Now, people like Noel Hadley, who has the Unexpected Conspiracy Channel, he and others believe that the Great Tribulation started around the year 536 AD, which was considered the worst year in history. So much happened. The sun didn't shine for a couple years. It went into a mini ice age, crops failed, famines, death. So I've been trying to reconcile that 536 AD with after 70 AD, and I think that's part of the timeline discrepancy, that it all was pretty much around the same time. I wasn't there, so I can't prove it. However, there is so much evidence that the Great Tribulation has occurred. And I'll be happy to post some in our little our Telegram channel here, so that you can see some of the scriptural proof. But the physical proof throughout the realm is just massive. But we haven't been cognizant of it previously because the history of these things have been scrubbed. Like, whoever heard of the mud flood before a few years ago, or the big melt? You know, where city after city was actually melted.
Knowledge of it.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of it until just a few years ago, and I'm like, why haven't we heard about this? You know?
Yeah, but we promise we are not preterists at all. We believe in keeping
Definitely.
the feasts. We believe in keeping his Sabbath. All of his laws still apply. Nothing basically has changed. We all still have the same goal, because we know
Yeah,
to be a part of
exactly.
the kingdom, we have to be abiding by his laws.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because heaven and earth has not passed away.
No.
And his words are to still be kept.
Revelation 6:2, the pandemic, and we're just about ready to have war all over the world. Revelation 6:4, the red horse of the apocalypse. So we're definitely on that bit, because it's happening in front of us.
So how much in the way of time do you think we got left?
Very little.
I think instead of looking forward to the millennial reign, we are looking forward to eternity instead.
Yeah. So it's actually very exciting. A lot of people, when they first learn about the millennial reign being past history, they're actually upset, saying, wait a minute, you know, we wanted to be part of that. And they feel left out. But the millennial reign was not for us. It was for the resurrected saints. It was their reward. And that time had a purpose. It's not our purpose. But what's even more exciting is we're so close to the eternal reign, the final reign, that where the new Jerusalem will be established here physically on earth forever, not just for a finite time of 1,000 years, but forever. And we have the opportunity to be part of that. You know, civilization has already been through hell over and over and over, and I would not want to go back and be that generation that came out of the millennial reign, because it was hell for them. Those that weren't taken up into the camp of the saints, it was awful.
What I think is really, really important to understand in the case of understanding the calendar and everything is one of the biggest complaints that I get with trying to understand the calendar of believers. People will come at me and say, well, nobody's going to get the calendar. It's too complicated. No one could get it. We're just going to wait for Messiah to come back, right, and give it to us, right? And so you see this lukewarm sense because they think that Messiah is going to come back in the millennial reign and teach us. And I think that's the purpose of our captors and of Satan right now, to deceive us from learning the calendar, to be able to, you know, stay in that lukewarm type of mindset where Messiah is just going to come back and fix it all, rather than the idea of judgment coming next.
Yeah.
So it's
Sorry,
it's a
Yeah,
way
and how
that
many?
we can understand, how important being on time really is. And these books were given to us now so that we can do the righteous things and step out and step up and start preaching the calendar, because the most of the believers think that it's just going to be handed over to us like a silver platter.
Yeah,
And
and they think they're going to be raptured out as well, so they're not preparing. There's
And
no
going back,
urgency to prepare.
and going back to the very first section in Enoch, Enoch is describing history in reverse. He starts by saying this is for the elect, and then he goes into the great white throne judgment, and then after that he talks about the millennial reign. We give Enoch a great lot of credence, but if you read it in the way that it should be read, he's talking about history ending before he's talking about the end. But if you read it through, you'll get.
Ken, you broke up.
Sorry, if you read Enoch at the beginning, and read it as in the end of history, but read it as he's going backwards in history, if you know what I mean. He's talking about the elect will be saved, and then he talks about the great throne judgment, the day of judgment, and goes through all those things. Then he goes through, then he will go back into the millennial reign. So when you read in the first part of Enoch, he's going backwards. He's not telling you forward of what's happening. He's telling us, actually, this is the end. Before that, it's the next thing. Before that is the next thing.
I think that's only gotten Enoch from about 1960 or 70 onwards when it became available. But even then, that was fragmented. The fullness of it came into about 1980, 84.
So, in the terms of number of years, what do you think?
Like, how long does the little season last? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of us think of, so it doesn't give the same terminology as it does with the millennial reign, right? With being 1,000 years. So it says he's loosed for a little season. So in terms of little season, we're projecting maybe about 400, but it's definitely less than 1,000. I know that's not a direct answer, but it's enough time to deceive the entire nations to make war with the camp of the saints. And in order to deceive an entire nation, it's going to take a lot of indoctrination, which we have seen, right? With all the religions and with the schooling and with all the lies that we've been taught. There's definitely an indoctrination and brainwashing that's happened to everybody. And so, and that's how you're able to deceive the nations to make war with something that is actually here to try to save you. So it takes enough time to at least indoctrinate the whole world to make war with something that they don't understand. Because if you knew who was coming, you wouldn't make war with them. So, and however long that indoctrination takes, it takes a little bit, but not a lot of time, not like 1,000 years. I hope that answers your question.
Well, we're definitely on what I just said before. We've just done Revelation 6:2. Apollyon's bow coming forth to conquer. He conquers. We're now doing Revelation, but it's about to happen in front of our faces. The red horse, the apocalypse, is coming out. We're on Revelation 6:4. We're not far away. That's definitely happening. That's a given.
What are you thinking, Libby?
Well, what I'm thinking is we've got a lot to go if that's the case.
You know, we could be cut short because, I mean, look at what's happening now with the clot shot and everything and people being transformed. And it seems as though they're trying to set up a fake temple to do sacrifices on. I mean, that could be enough for Yahuah to be like, all right, it's time. It's done. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's more sooner than later, but, you know, this calendar message, you know, needs to go forth, you know, to all the people, which is why I'm so vocal about it, because it's a message for us. Open the books of Enoch. Open the books of Jubilees. This is for the end generation. If these books are being opened, that means we are in the end.
Yeah. And are you thinking then that the people who are existing in the world today are going to come to the point of accepting what we believe in with the calendar?
Some will, some won't.
Yeah, you know, you see a massive amount of people waking up around the Revelation 12 sign in 2017. You had a bunch of people waking up with COVID. They're coming in spurts, but it was a huge awakening with COVID. I mean, so many people came to faith and they jumped right on the right calendar and all that, which is fabulous. So now,
look how many people have woken up to the globe lie. That kind of seemed to open up the floodgates. The globe lie.
Yeah.
Flat Earth is also encouraged an immense amount of people to question exactly where they're living and what's right and correct, what they've been told or indoctrinated into.
Where's the line? It's something we'll have a look at, and if Katrina will put that for me on the private thing, we'll all have a look at it. Yeah. We'll all have a look and see.
Libby, I also posted several different videos that goes into detail with everything we were just discussing about the little season and the buildings and the natural energy. It's all there in the chat for this talk that we're having.
Right, thank you. I've
You're
seen
welcome.
little bits. I've seen little bits and pieces just from time to time. You know, I can't. Most days I have a quick 20 minutes look on the Telegram thing, but sometimes I can't spend any more than 20 minutes at the beginning, you know, of the day. But I've seen this bits and pieces about the little season, but I've never really got the grip of it as to what you're actually talking about. So I will look, and we'll all have a look. Not just me, but we'll all have a look and see what this is about, because to be honest, this is something new to me, and it's worth looking at. It's worth looking at. The only thing that's disappointing for me at coming up to my age, I think to myself, oh boy, I was hoping he was coming tomorrow. Now it looks as though you're saying 400 years away. Yeah. And I'm thinking, 400 years away? I'll be gone. I'll be gone.
No, not 400 years away. Just 400 years for the deception about. I think we're at the end of the 400, honestly.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You
I was
know,
thinking it was.
Libby, my parents passed away recently at 95 and 100, and their whole life they taught us about the millennial reign, and they were holding out because they wanted to be here when the millennial reign occurred, and they got so old trying to hang on. And I told them, I says, you know what? If you guys are tired, just, it's okay if you go. We'll catch up with you and just go rest, because those who pass before, just are at rest in Sheol. And but at the time, this was a couple years ago, I didn't know that the millennial reign had already passed. I don't know if that would have made a difference with them or not, but they taught us a lot and believed that was occurring. But I think it's even more exciting that it is in the past. And this Satan's little season, the Satan's season of deception, where he is loosed to wreak havoc on the nations, it's never taught in any of the churches. It's a subject that's completely absent. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why everybody conflates the two different kingdom manifestations, the timelines. Because, we read, there's a little blip in Revelation 20, but we're not taught about it. It's never talked about, and we don't realize how big and massive that time of Satan's deception is. It's not just a few weeks or a few months. It's a couple hundred years or more. But compared to the whole timeline of time since creation, 200, 300, 400 years is still a short season in comparison.
Well, we'll have a look. But I'm just a bit disappointed tonight because I thought he was coming tomorrow.
Well, he is. And the thing is, the scripture never says that Yahushua only has one return. It never says that. Everybody thinks he's only returning once. And if he's already returned, people think, oh, we've missed it. No, he is coming back for the final annihilation of the wicked. This is what is about to happen in Revelation 20. I think it's either verse 7 or 9. It says that the wicked will come up against the camp of the saints and surround them. And that's when Yahuwah comes out. He's had enough. He comes out with fire, annihilates them. These are the wicked nations, the Gog-Magog nations that come up against the camp of the saints, whether it's the resurrected saints wherever they're hidden, or saints, maybe us, throughout the world. They are closing in on us, but they are annihilated, Libby. Now, during the millennial reign, the sinners were still around. It never said this is 1,000 years with no sinners or no sin.
Just the adversary taken away. Just
Right.
the accuser of brethren was taken away. That way we were left with no excuse. We were just left with our own free choice, right?
Yeah.
Whether we were going to serve him or whether we were not going to listen to him. And those nations that did not listen to him, that did not come up to the Feast of Tabernacles, they got no rain. And you see civilizations that thrived that just were no more around those times. And so they did get no rain. They had famine.
What do you do about?
Hey, Libby.
Yeah.
Did you get to talk to Eddie Chumney?
Yes. I did.
Okay. I know him personally.
Long story short. Long story short, she went over this a couple times today, once in the group and once before the group. I'm going to give her a little break. But she did go over the hot bread situation with Eddie. And he sat and he listened to the whole thing. But no, he didn't say anything. He just listened to her talk about 1 Samuel 20 and 21. And she, Jim went over, what did you go over?
Job 3:6. And Libby then went over the priestly courses, the divided day for the years.
How did he take that? Because I've
Well,
texted him, so
again,
he's going to call me, and I'm going to ask him
he was
myself.
he was at a conference, and so I said to him, I just shared a tiny bit with him about Job breaking his heart to the Most High, and the Most High answered this prayer by removing that day off the face of the earth by saying it's still there, but it's not reckoned in the days. And that's what the scripture says. But it is there. And on top of that, it also says in Job chapter 3, verse 6, which is the final part of his prayer, that, it is the day that divides, the dividing day of the year, Job's day of birth, and Jeremiah's as well. So, basically speaking, he shows the day there clearly. There's evidence of it. And then on top of that, we do a couple of 3 or 4 days early before the conference, me and Libby shared about the hot bread in 1 Samuel 1:20, and then Libby at the conference by absolute, almost miraculous, because I had thought I'd booked 3 days of my accommodation. I had to go and get my wife, who's an elderly woman of 81, and Libby was looking after her. So I got a text while I was over there vacating the property because they needed to vacate, and I thought we'd booked it for 3 days. Jessica Knock then sends a text saying, tell Libby she can come. And later on during the conference, she spoke to Eddie about the priestly courses and what am I looking at there, Libby? Job 3, verse 6.
Yeah. He sent me a text to the live stream that was happening over there in England. So.
All right, got you. So it was an interesting time because
yeah.
he's had a double witness or 3 witnesses of the truth. And we're not using our ideas, we're using pure scripture to describe what should be rightly divided in the scriptures, not what we think.
Yeah, Lee, now
Right.
it's your turn. It's your turn to get to him.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm just
go for it, brother.
going to ask
In
him
my place.
about his approach to it. So we'll find out.
Stranger
I mean,
needs
I'm
to
not
be
going to
here.
be forceful. I don't
No,
believe in being
Well,
forceful. I mean, if
me
he
neither.
doesn't get it or whatever, that's fine.
I was hoping that he would have engaged a little bit, but he didn't. But the only thing he raised an eyebrow over was when I related what Jeremy had said on the last Shabbat last week. And Jeremy had gone and said, well, why should anybody be surprised when we know that he divides the seasons? The 4 seasons are all got a divider day in them. So why should we be surprised when he got a divider day in the year as well? And I totally agree with that, with Jeremy, completely, and we all do. But, he raised his eyebrows at that one, and I could see him studying my face, and I could see the brain box was going round, and he was thinking about that one.
Yeah, we're the ones that brought Eddie to the Zadok. Me and Jerry brought Eddie
Wonderful.
to the Zadok part
How long
and the
ago
Dead
was
Sea
that?
Scrolls.
How long ago would
And,
you say that was?
oh, gosh, 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, well, that's
Okay.
rather funny
3
because,
or 4 years ago.
as you
But I
know,
don't think...
as you know, we live in Scotland, and going back 15 years ago, I was asked by 2 men who live on the East Coast if I could arrange a venue for Eddie Chumney to come and speak in the town where we live, in Dumfries. And so I found a venue, and he asked me to rustle up some people, and I managed to find 17 people, which didn't seem an awful lot, but I suppose when you think about it, it was quite a few back then. And anyway, we arranged the meeting, and then I was asked whether after the meeting would I have Eddie Chumney, back to the house. And so I said, oh, of course I will. Yes, definitely. So I fed and watered Eddie Chumney after the meeting. It was a very good meeting. And I say this is about 15 or 16 or 17 years ago. And when he'd had his meal, I was going to give him, the ability to be able to stay overnight in a bed. And so I was going to put him up for the night. And while he was there in my home, I said to him, Eddie, I said, I'd like to ask you a question. I said, what do you know about the Dead Sea Scrolls? And he didn't answer, and he looked a little puzzled, and he said, nothing. So I
He
said,
didn't.
oh.
He didn't.
So I said to him, well, I said, I would like to share with you about the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I talked to him all that night, and when he left in the morning, I can visualize it now. The man had come to pick him up. Eddie sat in the passenger seat while he was being driven up the drive, and I remember that I was running alongside the side of the passenger door, and I tapped on his window. I can just see him now, and he put his finger up, and I said, Eddie, don't forget, Eddie, to look into the Dead Sea Scrolls. And he looked at me and he said, I will. And that's all I heard of him. And then I never saw him ever again until I landed up in Lutterworth with the eating wild honey and locusts, EWHAL, with Dr. Stephen Pidgeon and Eddie Chumney. And they landed placing me in the middle of these two scholars. And it was quite amazing, actually. But it's on YouTube. You can have a look at it sometime. It's a debate on the calendar, and I landed up on that debate. And when I brought the calendar out from a carrier bag underneath my chair, I can remember Eddie looking as if to say, oh my word, what's that she's got there? And he had such a look of surprise about him. But one of the questions that Stephen Pidgeon, he thought that he'd absolutely going to floor me. And he said, so where does it say that, Libby, in the Dead Sea Scrolls? And all of a sudden, I believe Yahuah gave me the answer. And I just looked at him and I said, it says it in 4Q 423D. And Stephen Pidgeon looked as if to say, oh, my word. And I think it floored him. Yeah. So.
Yeah. You know, he doesn't. Eddie has not studied on the calendar. He just knows and going around teaching information to others. And I know he hasn't studied the calendar out. I know this. But he's laying a foundation going across everywhere.
He's seeming to side with the priestly courses with Robert and Gina. That's who he sounds like he's siding with in regards to the calendar matter.
Yeah.
Well, what he needs to do is side with Yahuah, not with anybody or man or woman. I don't side with Libby, and Libby doesn't side with me. We side with Yahuah. That's it. There's no other course.
Yes. Yeah. Like I say, he doesn't know much about the calendar part, but he knows that the Zadok priests were the true priests in Messiah's day, and he's going around everywhere, probably, and that's probably what you heard during that meeting, I'm sure.
It was good. It was good stuff. He was really on the money. I loved what he said.
Oh yeah. Eddie's he's a really good teacher, and he can teach simplicity to a simple crowd, and they can understand. He's got a very good gift in reaching people as far as that goes.
Yeah.
And to not get over their head.
No, he's good.
Yeah. Well, Katrina will fill you in sometime, but I got myself a little bit hurt, I suppose, in a way, but I've had to get over it. The fact that when we met him on the 3 or 4 days prior, on the Thursday before, I was told to my face when Eddie was there, but not by Eddie, but by somebody who was in our little, not our Scottish gang, but somebody else down there who was organising this Eddie Chumney meeting that was on in the last few days this week in Huddersfield. I was told that everybody in Scotland is welcome to come to the feast, not to the feast, to the gathering, this meeting with Eddie Chumney, apart from Libby. Libby's not allowed to come.
Oh, really?
I've got over the hurt now. It doesn't matter anymore. I've just got past it. But in some rather remarkable way that I think only Yahuah has a sense of humour could arrange. Jim, who was supposed to have arranged the accommodation for 3 nights, he got it mixed up and he only did 2 nights. So we got sort of chucked out of our accommodation and had to find somewhere else. But the people at the meeting, the conference, got to hear that we'd had to get out of our meeting. So although I'd been told I wasn't allowed to come, somebody thought to themselves, well, you can't have an 81-year-old lady and Libby sitting outside in the car for the next 8 or 9 hours while Eddie Jumney speaks. And so a message got sent to Jim, phone from Jessica Knox saying that I was allowed to come, and I was very grateful that I could come to the meeting, And although I did feel hurt, I did. I can't say I didn't. I felt very hurt about it. And of course, 1 or 2 of the people at the meeting looked at me and said, "Oh, we haven't seen you this week. Are you a newbie?"
How arrogant! How arrogant! How arrogant!
Yeah, so it was a bit hurtful, but still I got over it, and I don't hold any grudges or anything, because literally, if the only thing that I actually, with the accommodation being, changed over, and I got to go for the very last meeting to hear him, well, so be it, and it was great, and I loved hearing him. I thought he was absolutely marvelous. I really loved it. And I really enjoyed it. But that last 20 minutes when I could, at the end of the meeting, Eddie sat alone and I went over to him and I sat with him and I told him exactly. I said, look, I am the age I am. And Eddie, I might never see you ever again, ever. I don't know, because I said, I'm cracking on a little bit now. And I said, I don't know whether I'll be still here the next time you come round. But I said, I just want you to know that this calendar, it's not me, Eddie. It's not my thinking. The answer to the Sabbath is in those 2 passages in 1 Samuel 20 and 21. It's not my doing. It's Yahuah's confirmation of where is the Sabbath. It's in the hot bread, which is the priestly courses, where Ahimelech says that, I can't give you, David, I can't give you the new hot bread. It's on the table of the presence. I can only give you the bread that's coming off the table of the presence. And there is the key. And he says, as long as you've not been with women for 3 days, and of course, counting backwards, it was the 7th day Sabbath when he spoke those words, Ahimelech, in chapter 21. And then it was the next day of the 3 was day 6 on the menorah, and then day 5 on the menorah. So there's 5th of the month, 6th of the month, and 7th of the month. And there's your absolute proof without any doubt whatsoever. There's no shadow whatsoever of it being wrong. It's in the Bible. It's not my words, it's scripture. And it's sitting there for everybody to read it. And there is your proof, positive, absolute positive, that the 7th day Sabbath was that scripture that is in chapter 21, where he'd gone to Ahimelech and Ahimelech gave him the old bread off the table. That's proof that that's where it was. And so therefore, Equinox Day is day 1. You can't get round it. Equinox Day is definitely day 1 of the month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it says Tekufa Shene, the turning of a year.
Yeah, absolutely. So all these folk who believe, sadly, that it's the day following the equinox to start the year, I don't believe that that's right. And I certainly don't believe that any Wednesday comes into the equation. And I certainly don't believe that you move forward. It's wherever the equinox falls in that year. It's the same as your birthday. Your date of your birthday is fixed, whether it's 1 year, 20 years, 50 years, 60 years time. It's still the same date. But the day of the Gregorian week will change upon which day your date of your birthday falls upon. And the same with the 20th of March, spring